Hello and good evening as you join us for a meeting of the Planning Committee of the City of York Council on Thursday, the 3rd of December 2020. Whether you're watching this live or whether you're watching it at a later date, thank you for joining us. And for the benefit of those who may not be familiar with how these remote meetings work, we have here on the screen various members of the council, elected representatives, but also some officers of the council and a number of others who are with us in the meeting but not visible on screen, either as technical support or as others who are here to support the meeting in various ways. And if and when they appear, they will then be joining us on screen. And I'll just remind those officers of the council to introduce themselves by name and their job title as you join us for the first time. As we go through the course of the meeting, if members want to comment, ask a question, they'll raise a blue virtual hand and I'll see those hands raised. And if during the course of our conversations there's a supplementary, somebody has something that's relevant to the topic in hand and it would be good to deal with it there and then rather than as it were wait in the queue, then we'll deal with that by raising a physical hand to the screen. And when we come to vote, just to be sure that we're all clear about the vote, that will be a recorded and named vote as we come to that point. So welcome to all those who are here, all the councillors. I do have some apologies. Councillor Eyre has given apologies and is substituted by Councillor Widdowson. So thank you, Councillor Widdowson. Councillor Barker has also given apologies in order that he can speak to one of the items this evening. And thank you to Councillor Wardby, who's acting as substitute for him. And Councillor de Gorn has also given apologies, and thank you to Councillor Baker for substituting for him. As we begin the meeting, I ask whether there are any declarations of interest, whether any members have any interests which are declarable, disclosable, personal, prejudicial in regard to our agenda items this evening. I don't see anybody indicating, so we move on. We have minutes to approve. We have minutes of two meetings, that of the 9th of July this year, which we've looked at before, but was subject to some checking, so it's come back to us, and the meeting on the 8th of October of this year. Do any members have any comments, questions, additions, corrections? Again, I don't see anybody. So can I just have a show of hands that you're happy to accept those minutes? I think I see sufficient hands on the screen. Thank you very much. Thank you. There are no registered public speakers for the general remit of this committee. So we come on to the plans list as we have it. We have two items on our agenda this evening. The first of those is a site, land at Boroughbridge Road, west of Trenchard Road in York, for the erection of 60 affordable homes and associated infrastructure, including access, open space, landscaping. And we're going to ask the officers of the council to introduce this for us. We've got both Becky and Jonathan on screen. Becky, are you going to begin?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm Becky Eads, Head of Development Services. I'm just going to run through the update that was circulated to members earlier. As a point of clarification, the applicants are Carbon Homes and York Housing Association. There is also an extra reason for refusal proposed because the applicants don't agree to the required Section 106 obligation with regard to education. Because they haven't agreed to this, we are recommending a further reason for refusal because there's no capacity at local preschools, primary and secondary schools within the catchment of the application site to accommodate the proposed development. Given this, there is an extra reason for refusal there. There's also a slight adjustment to the original reason for refusal to include Upper and Nether Poppleton Neighbourhood Plan within the wording of the reason for refusal. And there is also additional comments from the council's housing officer. Obviously, this scheme is for 100% affordable housing, which they're supportive of, and they're explaining about the need for that within the within their comments. I'm now going to share my screen with you to go through some of the plans that have been submitted. Just bear with me a second while I make that full screen. There we go. Oops. So the application site, this is the proposed layout and site plan. I'm just going to change my pointer. So here we have Boroughbridge Road here and Trenchard Road within here, within the existing properties within here. You can see there's a new access in here. This is opposite the former civil service ground new entrance that's proposed in here. I'll go through that with you in just a second. As you can see, the housing set back from the road to retain as many trees as possible here. The access road in and around with public open space, but it does also retain a portion of arable land within here. So just 2 seconds. These are the proposed elevations of standard 2-storey house types. Or they're the apartments there. Again, you can see their layout in terms of the space. Again, further house types, 2-storey standard house types within the site with their floor plans. This is a 3D visual of how the site will sit within Boroughbridge Road. With Boroughbridge Road here, and as you can see, the homes within here around the open space and the existing properties here. And again, another 3D visual looking out towards York. This Boroughbridge Road is put on this side here. Just going to go down again. This is an extract from the local plan, which I think is quite useful to members. All this area here that you can see, oh, my pointer's having a moment, is this site here is the application site that you can see very clearly is within the green belt. ST2 over the road, that's the site for the former civil service ground that does now have planning permission. You can very clearly see over here that this isn't green belt and this is all developed land, whereas over here, very clearly green belt and open in its nature. I'm just going to go to a satellite plan again, which illustrates this. Again, you can see how this, so this is the green, this is the site here, again with the green belt running along here. This is the former civil service ground that will be developed, and the Manor Church of England Academy in here, and the developed land around this side. So it's very clear that that's a greenfield site that's coming forward to development, whereas this is clearly within the green belt. So there you go. I will turn that off and go to any questions to myself and Jonathan.
So if members have any questions, please do indicate and I'll come to you in order. At this moment, I don't have any questions. Oh, yes. Councillor Baker.
Sorry, I was just struggling to get the blue hand. Just tiny point of clarification, Becky. The last thing you said was the civil service sports ground was clearly a green field land. I'm not sure what you mean. Do you mean brownfield?
Becky, we can't hear you at the moment.
Helps if you unmute yourself, doesn't it? Go on, Jonathan, you can do it for me.
So it's mostly greenfield, the civil service site. It used to be sports and recreation, so there was some land on there that was previously developed for car parking and the clubhouse and change rooms, etc. But the rest of it was open and green, and it also included an agricultural field that wrapped around it on the northern side by Millfield Lane. So that's agricultural, not being developed before.
But it's not classed as, sorry, I'm just not sure about this green. You mean it is a green field?
It's not
field. Classed, right? It's okay. All right, thanks.
That was the one that was approved for 266 houses have permission to be built there, and that's a site allocation in the emerging plan, the civil service site.
Thank you, Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. This is supplementary to Councillor Baker's question and the answer from Jonathan. That was still classed as green belt, though, wasn't it? The appeal that went to the Secretary of State stated that it was green belt and it was therefore inappropriate within the green belt, but the special circumstances were such that it was approved. Is that correct?
That's correct, but it's also provisionally allocated in the draft local plan. That's the difference between that site and the site where we're looking at now. The site that we're looking at now isn't proposed in the local plan. It is proposed to remain as greenbelt, whereas the site over the road is ST2, which is allocated.
No, okay. It was just clarification.
Yeah,
the difference between green field and green belt. But for the purposes of this meeting, that site was considered still to be green belt.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause any confusion with that.
Councillor Cobain.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Isn't the allocation of the green belt the reason why the inspectors have not approved our draft local plan?
It's not quite as simple as that. I can see that Mr. Slater is here to answer that question. He's just popped up.
In terms of greenbelt and the characteristics, the civil service sports ground area has been sort of changed with the new Manor High School that was created, and it was felt in terms of assessing greenbelt around the city that did no longer fulfil the greenbelt objective or function, and it's clearly distinguishable then from the other areas on that north western side of the city, including the current application site, which forms, I think, as was demonstrated earlier by reference to aerial photographs and an extract from the local plan, it forms part of a wider area of open space going up to the ring road and then extending round to the west of the city. So the question in terms of the inspectors and the green belt, the inspectors have asked us to do some more work on the green belt methodology before we get into examining the green belt boundaries, which are being challenged by a large number of people, largely with development interests. So pretty much there's developer interests on all of the green fields around the city, around the edge of the built up area effectively. But those are matters we're addressing now, but some of the principles of the green belt. And it's been long established that there is a green belt around York, and it goes back to the structure plan and regional spatial strategy. The issue has always been for York has been defining that inner boundary of the green belt. And that's what the local plan is proposing to do now. Hope that helps.
Councillor Waters, I'll come to you in a moment. I've noticed your hand there, so to save you holding it up, I will come in a moment. But I've got both Councillor Lomas and I think Councillor Pavlovic, you wanted something further. I think you were indicating anyway before that you had a question. So Councillor Lomas first, then Councillor Pavlovic, then I'll come to you, Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I wonder if, Becky, you could show us it wasn't a photograph, it was a plan that was coloured in. I don't know how to describe it other than that, but could you just show us that again? Sorry, that would just be helpful. That's the one.
That the one?
Yeah, that's the one. Thank you very much.
I know it's not the clearest. We tried to make it as clear as possible, but this like yellowy green is the green belt, and then as you can see the allocations, and if it's white, that's not allocated there.
Lovely. Thank you very much.
Is that right?
Thank you. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. I have got a few questions, and essentially they relate to the inquiry relating to Miller Homes and the difference between the conclusions that the inspector found and this site, if that's going to be helpful. The inspector stated that the provision of affordable homes on the Miller, the civil service site, was needed to be given significant weight, and the lack of the fact that there was no adopted local plan was moderate weight. Is that correct? And in which case, the fact that this is 100% affordable housing, how much weight did you give that within this application, and the fact that York does not have a 5-year housing supply?
It's Jonathan. Just one of the things to mention about the civil service. I think when the inspector was making their assessment there, it's important to remember that they didn't find that site served any of the purposes of the green belt, so that weighed quite heavily in their decision making. And we've mentioned in the report the weight that was given by the inspector both at civil service and Askham Bog as well. And obviously affordable housing does carry quite a high level of weight, but the green belt is very special, and that policy in our minds comes above housing needs and affordable housing need.
In this case, sorry, in this case.
Yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
Can I just ask a supplementary?
Of course you can.
On that, you mentioned in the report that this needs to be a plan-led. One of the reasons for refusal was that we need to have a plan-led policy. But given that we haven't got an adopted plan, could this have been considered to have been a windfall site, for example?
Two seconds. It's one of us. Just give me
That's
2
fine.
seconds.
No problem at all.
Mike Slater, I think clearly if
Mike,
it's not in the plan.
Mike, can I just come in? When you contributed last time, which was very helpful, I don't think you did just give your job description. So if you could do so this time.
I
great.
do
Thanks.
apologise, Chair. So it's Mike Slater, Assistant Director for Planning and Public Protection. In terms of a site as a windfall, yes, it would be a windfall because it's not in the local plan as a draft allocation. The city is surrounded by sites that people have development options on and wish to make representations on the local plan about whether those sites should be included, and this is one of those sites. So clearly, in terms of a plan-led process, the council submitted a draft plan. It's in the examination process. It is being considered. It's distinguishable from the civil service sports ground site in that was an allocation, and as Jonathan Kenyon, the case officer, has just said, from both the council's position and the inspector dealing with that site, the view was taken that site didn't fulfil a green belt purpose. And the argument officers from the local plan point of view were put forward for the inspector is that this site and the land adjacent to it on this north west side of the city fulfills a green belt purpose, and it isn't required to be brought forward because we have sufficient allocated land to fulfill the housing needs of the city for a very long period of time. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Waters.
Chair, can I just ask a supplementary on that, Chair?
I'll allow you to do that if you'll just bear with us for a moment, Councillor Waters. Okay.
Thank you, Mike. I thought that was helpful. But can I just ask, when you say that York's got a supply many years hence, does that also include the shortfall in affordable housing within the city? Because we currently have a significant gap between affordable housing need and affordable housing delivery. Can you just clarify when you say that, are we talking about including the shortfall in affordable housing?
Well, the local plan makes provision and there are policies in the local plan to address the affordable housing need. And obviously we expect then the new development that would come forward in the local plan to secure on each of the sites that come forward the affordable housing requirements to meet the affordable housing needs of the city.
Thank you.
Sorry, so the local plan makes that provision and the policies are in there to secure that then through the development management process.
Yeah, I just wanted you to confirm that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's helpful. Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. It was just in relation to the comments that was made about the green belt and the local plan. Well, I can recall it's just about exactly a year ago that the examination in public took place. I attended and spoke at a couple of the green belt sessions. It was clear at the time that the inspectors were not happy with the methodology that the council had used with site selection, and that was a case of they weren't happy with whether site A was retained in the green belt and site B was excluded from the green belt. And the subsequent correspondence from the planning inspectors indicates that they're still not happy with that position. The only reason I'm saying that is therein lies the problem with dealing with an application like this one tonight.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see any other members indicating that they have questions. So I'm going to move on to our public speakers, because we have speakers who have registered to be part of our discussion this evening. Are we ready with the public speakers? The first of whom I'm expecting to be Martin Wistow, who wishes to speak in objection.
Hello, I'm Martin Wistow.
Excellent. You've got 3 minutes to address the committee. If we're getting close to that, I'll just give you an indication, but in your own time.
Okay, thank you. I'm speaking to you both as chairman of the York Trenchard Residents Company and as a resident directly affected by the proposal by York Housing Association. You hopefully will have read the many letters from local residents objecting to this planning application to build on greenbelt agricultural land behind Trenchard Road, eloquently covering transport, schools, traffic and its associated pollution, infrastructure and the hugely significant greenbelt issue. I note that York Housing Association has, since its application, addressed technical issues raised through the planning department and submitted 2 further site designs. Sadly, they have not attempted to address the issues that cause most worry to local residents. Additionally, the development would ensure that York City and Poppleton, apart from a tiny field, would merge, split only by the ring road. For the last 5 or so years, 2 different City of York Council administrations have worked hard to produce a considered local plan for our city that has balanced the many needs of the population with local and national laws and with the requirement to define the green belt. They have consulted experts and the residents alike and modified the local plan as they deemed necessary. They have done a sterling job, and that plan is on the cusp of being adopted. I consider this to be democracy in action. York Housing Association have pointedly ignored all residents concerned and argue that a portion of our precious greenbelt should be bulldozed by invoking the term very special circumstances. However, City of York Council has encouraged the building of 2,500 dwellings at York Central, and within 1 kilometre of the planning application sites, 1,100 dwellings at the British Sugar site, and 266 on the old Civil Service Club site. It has, with an affordable housing quota of 20%, it should ensure that at least 733 affordable houses will be built along the A59 corridor. This number, in my opinion, prevents them legitimately to claim very special circumstances to build on the greenbelt. Furthermore, their first application graphic clearly shows future plans to include further developments on the agricultural land adjoining to the site to their south. Should they be granted approval to build on greenbelt lands, the floodgates would be open and it would be difficult to deny any further application once such a precedent has been established. If I may make one further point, for the developers to go so far as to write on the 24th of August 2020, I quote, "Carbon Homes has sought legal opinion and is prepared to appeal any refusal of planning permission," is regarded by me as tantamount to blackmail or bullying and has absolutely no part in the democratic process. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Wistow. Will you remain on the line for a moment, just in case there may be questions?
Yep, certainly.
I don't see any, so thank you very much. Thank you for joining us, and by all means, do watch the rest of this meeting through the live stream. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Our second speaker, Simon Grundy, agent for the applicant who's wishing to speak in support. Simon Grundy from Carter Jonas.
Thank you, Chair and committee, for the opportunity to speak in favour of this unique not-for-profit proposal by Carbon Homes and York Housing Association. In short, this is a single-issue case. The question is, in the face of the ongoing York housing crisis, should significant affordable housing delivery outweigh the Greenbelt contribution of the site in question? The committee report acknowledges that significant weight should be given to the proposals being a housing association scheme for 60 affordable housing units and having no general market housing. It also acknowledges that significant weight should also be given to the lack of a 5-year housing land supply across the city. What the report does not do is to set out just how acute the York housing crisis has become. It does not assess or acknowledge exactly how low the general housing land supply has become in late 2020. Based upon the most recent appeal evidence and trends, this could now be as low as 2 years. More importantly, the council acknowledges a specific affordable housing need of 573 dwellings per annum. Over the past 5 years, this equates to a requirement of 2,865 new affordable homes. Against this target, whilst the report claims actual delivery was 462 dwellings, in any event, a shortfall of 2,400 units, government statistics confirm that when taking into account right-to-buy sales, only a net 70 affordable housing units have been delivered since 2015. Since 2017, net affordable housing delivery has been minus 19 dwellings. If a fully informed and balanced decision is to be taken, we would ask that the council assesses and acknowledges the up-to-date housing land supply position, the true extent of affordable housing need, and the recent delivery failure since 2015, and the aggregate shortfall arising from that, and then affords a very heavy weighting to these factors in the planning balance for this application. Turning to the other side of this balance, we consider that the value of the site in Greenbelt terms is significantly lower than officers have stated. It is noteworthy that earlier in the local plan process, the site passed selection process for Greenbelt release and housing allocation under policy ST19. Our supporting evidence sets out the site's lack of contribution to the purposes of the Greenbelt, and in particular, we maintain that the development would have no effect on heritage assets or the historic core of the city. The character of the land beyond Trenchard Road is very much urban fringe with sporadic development, as opposed to being unspoilt open countryside, which it clearly is not. As a result, the alleged harm to openness is very limited and very much overstated in the committee report. We also note that the recommended reason for refusal relies upon the emerging draft local plan. In response, we draw attention to the fact that following the inspector's comments in January 2020 on the unsoundness of the submitted Greenbelt evidence, the council has still not completed work to update the Greenbelt topic paper some 11 months later. As a result, the examination is stalled for a reason that is not beyond the council's control, quite the opposite. To summarise this point, we consider that the failure of the emerging local plan to allocate the site, as mentioned in the suggested reason for refusal, should be wholly disregarded. In conclusion, we ask that the Planning Committee take stock of the housing crisis and true extent of net affordable housing under delivery in recent years, and considers that, as in 2014, a strong case can be made for the release of this land from the Greenbelt, if only as a windfall, and also gives appropriate and reduced weight to the Greenbelt contribution of the land. And on this planning balance, we respectfully request that planning permission be granted. Thank you.
Thank you for your contribution. Please bear with us. There may be questions from members. I see that Councillor Kilbane, Councillor Douglas. Councillor Kilbane first.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Can I ask why you've refused the education contribution under Section 106?
The reason we've questioned the support for that is because the policy base for requesting education contributions does not have any viability testing of the effects of deliverability of 100% affordable housing, all of the council's local plan viability evidence is based upon general housing market schemes. And of course, fully 100% affordable housing is, well, as I said at the outset, it's not for profit and it's delivered in a completely different way.
Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just ask, were approval to be granted, how quickly do you see this site being developed out?
We see it coming forward as soon as possible. I mean, for that reason, and as soon as possible, I imagine it being within 2021. I think the key point is that the discussions on funding with Homes England are well advanced. Funding has been agreed. This is an application for full planning permission. It's not an outline. We wouldn't have to come back to agree reserved matters. So the intention is, and as required by Homes England funding, for the development to come forward as soon as possible in 2021.
Can I ask one further question, Chair?
Please.
Again, were approval to be granted and these houses built, would they be available for social rent or affordable rent? By social rent, I mean 60% of market price and affordable rent 80%.
Well, there is actually a mix across the different tenures, including a significant percentage of rights to buy as well.
So this would be subject, these properties would be subject to right to buy, would they?
Some of them would, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Can I ask the applicant if you don't think that the assessment of the input to education places is appropriate in this situation? In your experience, how does an applicant like you actually contribute to the necessary infrastructure, particularly in this situation, education? Have you got any examples of how that has worked elsewhere?
I think the main point is that the occupants of the housing are already within the York education system, so the requirement would be merely being transferred from elsewhere. Unlike a general housing scheme, the occupants would be under nomination rights from the council and also from the waiting list of York Housing Association. And I've been advised by them that 100% of their waiting list is people from York already. So in effect, one of the things we are saying is that the proposed development being for people in need of affordable housing within York would place no additional burden on the education system across York.
Not sure I quite follow that. Councillor Kilbane.
Oh, thanks, Chair. We've heard tonight that there is enough land coming on tap under the developing local plan to provide all the affordable housing that York needs for the foreseeable future. Why have you gone for this site rather than one of those sites that are already designated in the emerging local plan?
Well, a number of the sites that are designated in the emerging local plan are not as suitable as this site for family housing. I think what you'll find across a lot of the brownfield sites in York is that the developments coming forward and the type of affordable housing accommodation that would be provided are going to be apartments. And I think this is why I described this development as unique, in that I don't think for the past 30 odd years there will have been a 100% affordable housing scheme by a registered provider that would solely provide family housing of this nature. And I think in respect of the more deliverable sites across the city that are allocated, they have been very much picked over by developers in terms of land values, partly as a result of the overheated housing market across York. They are simply not affordable.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not quite clear about your answer on education, really. And I suppose to put it differently, I mean, we're talking about family homes. Families will have children, even if they are at other schools in the city. The fact is they'll need to get there on a daily basis. Parents will have to get them there. Is there any way around this in terms of contribution towards transport costs to get them to the schools that they might already go to?
Well, that is something we can certainly consider if there are prospects of planning permission being granted by the council. There is a certain amount of money available for a range of deliverables, and depending on how that budget can be cut and negotiated, then we can look at those sorts of contributions as well. But what I would say, perhaps it'd be easier if I set out what the case we have made in writing is recently to the case officer in response to the £633,000 education request that has been sought. As I said previously, we do feel that there is no policy basis within either national policy or within the council's own local policies to actually justify a contribution in the first place. The point I was trying to make was that no development of this type has been assessed in terms of what the effect on viability that request may have. But going back to where the occupants for these houses are going to come from, as I say, they're not going to be from places outside York, places within York, people who are basically moving into York from outside. What I've said is all occupants of the proposed development will be drawn from the York Housing Association waiting list and subject to City of York Council nomination rights. We understand from York Housing Association that 100% of these families already are within the York education system, and as a result, there will be no effect on overall demand for school places across the city. In short, no new school places within York will be required as a result of the Carbon Homes proposals at Boroughbridge Road.
Still not sure that I fully accept that. I'm going to come back to Councillor Cobain and then Councillor Fitzpatrick. Are you still wanting to ask any further question?
Yeah, I want supplementary, really.
You go ahead then. Please do that. Please do that.
I still don't think that answers my question, really, about how they're going to get to school, really. It doesn't really explain that. They're already in the system. Fair enough, they're in the system. And maybe we can discuss transport. But I still think it's a real problem. Just to say you can put families there and expect them to sort out what they're doing. It's not as simple as that at all.
Councillor Palfrey, you've also got a supplementary?
I do, Chair. I'm just struggling with the answer that the applicant has made. Are you assuming, therefore, that none of these families in these 60 homes are going to have subsequent children?
No, we're not saying that at all. What we're saying is that those children of the future would automatically be within the York education system, perhaps elsewhere in the city, because they are on the York Housing Association waiting list, or they are already within York Housing Association settings, and that the occupants, as a result of this being 100% affordable housing, all of those people will come through the City of York Council nomination rights. They won't be moving in from other parts of the country and adding to the overall education burden upon York. They will simply be transferred from elsewhere within the city.
Makes no sense.
No, not to me. Councillor Daubney, you've also got a supplementary on this, I think.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Grundy, I appreciate that the point you're making quite strongly, that all of these children will be within the existing education system. But surely if someone takes a house in this area, they would wish their children to go to local schools. And that surely is the issue. Are there places available in local schools rather than where they are currently, which might be other side of the city for a young person that may be 7 or 8 years old?
Can I just say, I think we've probably taken this particular point as far as it's useful to do so. And I'm aware that Councillor Kilbane, I almost came back to you earlier, you've taken your hand down again. Has the point you made been touched on, or do you still have a further question for us?
Further question, Chair, if I
Please.
may. I don't know how my hand went down there. It's just in terms of the right to buy properties and the starter homes. What is there to stop them entering the market after the first people have bought them, and they're therefore becoming unaffordable to or out of the affordable homes bracket, should I say, for future occupants? I'm never quite sure who buys all the unaffordable homes. I suppose people have got no money to spend on anything else. But what's to keep them in an unaffordable in an affordable price bracket?
Well, I think there would be a Section 106 agreement which would be negotiated to control the future tenure of the dwellings, and I think that the main point is that we would be more than happy if there were prospects of planning permission directly from the council to negotiate exactly how those things are controlled. We would also be happy to negotiate how the money available for deliverables, including for education potentially, could be split to meet some of the requirements which are being placed before the applicants. I do think that there would potentially be an issue of viability that we would need to address, because the money available from Homes England and from the developers to fund the proposals is not finite. And again, I would point out that this is not a commercial housing development. It's not by a volume house builder who wants to make a profit for its shareholders. It's a not-for-profit proposal for affordable homes. And so I think on that basis, compared to general market housing, by definition, there is less money for planning deliverables to go around. I do think from the discussions we've had, it sounds like it would be quite useful for us to clarify this point about the transfer of people on the existing York housing register compared to what a burden would be placed on the education system by general market housing. It sounds very important for us to address that point before a decision is made, and we would like to take the opportunity to do that.
Thank you for your response. I'm sure that when you said the resources are not finite, you probably meant the resources are not infinite. Councillor Fenton.
That's exactly what I meant.
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up a point made by the public speaker, and it's referenced in the report, I think, in a comment from the Knapton and Roughhurst Parish Council, in terms of the suggestion by the public speaker that the layout of this development suggests it would be the first phase of a much bigger development. I just wondered if you could, if there's anything you wanted to say in response to that.
Yeah, that is absolutely not the case. The amount of land that has been, the deal has been done with the landowner is based upon what the applicants feel needs to be delivered in terms of affordable housing need around here. It's basically a straightforward case that this application should be dealt with on its own merits rather than what might come further down the line. So we would ask that the committee determines this proposal, not what local residents might fear might happen in the future. But certainly the quantum of development sets out a very efficient use of the land that's available. What the proposal is for 2 and 3 bedroom family homes, and nothing that is of a similar nature has come forward across the city, to my mind, in very recent years, and certainly nothing that proposes 100% affordable housing. We do feel that that aspect of the proposals renders this application to be unique, and also recent appeal decisions, certainly the Barwood and Boroughbridge Road decisions, underpin, the inspectors clearly underpin the extreme affordable housing need case. And in terms of the Barwood decision, there is a hint in there that had it not been for the triple SI issue, the inspector may well have actually, for the first time in many, many years, decided that general housing and affordable housing need should outweigh the Greenbelt. So I think, from my reading of that decision notice, I do think that that was a warning shot being fired.
Thank you, Mr. Grundy. I appreciate all your comments. There are no further questions indicated from members. I see Councillor Waters. Go ahead, Councillor Waters. Just
purely for clarity, Chair, the applicant's agent there had mentioned about this being unique in having 100% affordable. From memory, there was a small scheme out at Elverton, I think 30, 40 units, which was 100% affordable. I remember that coming to committee a few years back. Thank you for that. Councillor Baker?
Thank you. Sorry to go way back, but Councillor Pavlovic asked what was the percentage of social rent on this proposal. I don't think we actually had a figure on that compared to affordable rent.
Can I go back through my papers and give you an answer on that one? So I've had a chance to find the exact percentage. I'd rather not guesstimate it and give you the wrong number. So is that possible for me to do?
Thanks.
We'll give you a moment to do that. I'll just point out to members that we do have 3 further public speakers, each in objection. So it's reasonable that we give time to Mr. Grundy, but I imagine that we'll be drawing this to a conclusion before too long. I'm aware that Councillor Widdowson also has a question she'd like to put in a moment.
Is it possible, excuse me, Chair, is it possible for me to come back after the other people have been given a chance to speak?
I'm not sure how that would work with our, can I just have a comment on that from either the legal or technical people, please?
Hi, Chair, it's Chris.
Yes, please.
Technically, there's no issue. So if there's an issue, it will be one
okay.
of the legal
I'll allow that.
Front.
That's fine. That's fine.
Fine. Thank you.
So please, it will be helpful to have that information, and it gives me the opportunity then to turn to Councillor Widdowson.
Fine. Thank you very much.
Chair, it's just a point of clarification. A not-for-profit company does not mean to say it does not make profit, just so that we are all aware of that, and that the profit that it does make it is used to pay sometimes back into the process of what they're doing, but quite a lot of the times into the salaries of the management team. So just because it's got a title of not-for-profit does not mean to say it does not make profit or that it's a charity. So I just wanted to make clear that we all understand that.
Okay, that wasn't really a question, but we'll pass on. In that case, I think we're probably at a point where we can move on to the next speaker. I don't see anybody else indicating otherwise, so thank you very much. Unless it might just be that Mr. Grundy has also already come back with an answer. No?
So not just yet, I'm afraid.
Okay, then we'll turn to the other speakers and we will come back to you at the end. Thank you very much.
For your patience.
That's fine. Peter Rollings, I hope you're able to join us in a moment. Are you there? Peter Rollings, Chairman of Rutherford and Knapton Parish Council. I understand you wish to speak in objection, outlining the objections of the parish councils.
Can you hear me, Chairman?
Absolutely. You go ahead, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee.
Thank you. Whilst the proposed site is not within the boundaries of Rutherford Knapton Parish, it is immediately adjacent to it, and any development would have a severe impact on our residents, particularly those in the Trenchard Road area and in Knapton. And we object strongly to the application on the following grounds. Firstly, the site is clearly in the Greenbelt. In the absence of a fully adopted local plan for York, the fourth set of changes 2005 is the vehicle for definition of the Greenbelt for development purposes. This was clearly confirmed by the independent examiner in his report on the Rutherford Knapton Neighbourhood Plan, which was adopted in December 2018. The vehicle for any change to the Greenbelt is the submitted York local plan, and the site is in the green belt in both the existing definition and in the submitted plan. It appears that the applicant does also accept this to be the case. The site was considered in the preparation of the local plan, the Poppleton neighbourhood plan, and as part of the larger site, which was subject of an earlier application and which would be in our parish, the Rufferth-with-Napton neighbourhood plan, and was rejected by all three for reasons detailed in your officer's report. The applicant attempts to prove very special circumstances on the grounds of provision of affordable housing. We contend that any development on this site would cause significant harm to the greenbelt. It would cause major harm to the openness of the area, particularly to views when entering or exiting the city via the A59. One of the key purposes of the greenbelt is to prevent urban sprawl, and this site has a vital role in preventing the coalescence of the urban city of York with the villages of Poppleton and Napton. The application relies totally on a need for affordable housing in the area, but ignores the fact that planning permission has already been granted for over 300 affordable homes in total on the civil service and British Sugar sites. The need for affordable housing, and indeed all housing, has been carefully assessed in the submitted York local plan, and it has been decided in that plan that the need for affordable housing in the city can adequately be met without the site in question. Ladies and gentlemen, you, as in the City of York, have submitted a well thought out local plan that has gone through extensive consultation with residents and provides a balance between meeting the future housing needs of the city and protecting our green spaces and surrounding countryside. This site was rejected in that local plan, and it would seem perverse to approve a planning application which is contrary to the plan which you have submitted and are presumably committed to, and I urge you to follow your officer's recommendation and refuse this application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'm looking to see if there are questions. Councillor Widdowson, your hand is up, but I think it's still there from last time. Just checking. Okay. I don't see any questions, so thank you very much for joining me, Mr. Rawlings, and I'm sure you'll continue to watch this through the live stream.
Thank you very much.
And that brings us to Councillor Barker, a ward councillor who wishes to speak in objection.
Chair, fellow councillors, thank you very much. This piece of greenbelt provides, as we've heard, space between York and the outlying villages and does prevent urban sprawl. I do appreciate, and I really do, the need for affordable homes, but I do not feel the applicant will stop at this development. They already have options for the adjoining fields. The layout even refers to access for future development. Directly opposite this site, or this proposed development, Miller Homes will shortly be building 266 units, 80 of which come under the affordable bracket. Construction will commence early next year. Within a quarter of a mile of this site is the old British Sugar site, which is set to yield some 1,100 units, again with a compensatory number of affordable homes. We've heard that the local infrastructure simply cannot cope, and I've heard nothing this evening that alludes me to change of special circumstances to grant planning. I also feel that we should start developing our brownfield sites before we start ripping up this green and present land, and I would urge my fellow councillors to reject this application and keep the green belt green. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I'm looking for questions, but I don't see any at this point. So thank you very much for joining us. And as we've said to others, do continue to watch the rest of the meeting. Councillor Hook, also ward councillor, I think is there to also speak in objection. Are you there, Councillor Hook?
Hi, can you hear me?
Absolutely. Do please address the committee, and as you know, up to 3 minutes.
Yes. I've already heard some really good objections to the thing, so I've not got that much to add. But having been at an area planning meeting recently where Councillor Fisher said about neighbourhood plans and how much work and effort that people went into to produce them, this flies in the face of both the neighbourhood plan for Upper Poppleton Parish, well, the two Poppleton Parish Councils and the Rutherford-Napton neighbourhood plan as well. And, you know, they are the legal documents in the absence of the local plan. Added to that, there was on the website an extra map that came up with the area that was under development in mauve. I don't know if you can see that, but if you look at that map, the top right-hand corner's got Parkside Cottage in it. Immediately across the road to that is the Brownfield British Sugar site. And at the previous area planning meeting, one of the members said that that was nowhere near Poppleton. It's actually within 300 yards of the entrance to the newly proposed site. So you can see it just across the road from Parkside Cottage. I think one thing that no one has mentioned is the fact that currently the doctors in Poppleton is really, really short of places. You can wait for 3 weeks, even pre-COVID. Try to think what it's like now to get an appointment, and this will just add more stress on the doctors. And finally, is it finally? Yes. Thing is, people are stressing the affordable homes, but the fact is that affordable homes have been granted in other sites, but then no one's building. I mean, I remember back in the 90s, or early 2000s, someone was talking about British Sugar. And yet, you know, do we keep on digging up the greenbelt to make new affordable homes or grant people with options to them on the greenbelt to build affordable homes when and the other lot just aren't doing anything? And it could be that we could just grant applications to people to dig up the greenbelt and no affordable homes are ever built, because no private developer is going to build during a recession when they're not going to make any money. And therefore, it's much better to rely on York Central and things that's happening under the aegis of the council, where we are actually going to be building. And that's really all I wanted to say. Thank you. Bye.
Well, bear with us for a moment, just in case there are questions. I've got Councillor Lomas, I think, has a question.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Hook. Just a question. You talked about the doctor's surgery in Poppleton. Just looking at the map and the location of this development, it strikes me as odd that somebody would choose to attend a doctor's surgery where they would have to travel a significant distance, including traversing a level crossing, to go to a GP surgery when there are other GP surgeries much closer and without those challenges, and which would be accessible via public transport. So I'm just asking if you can give us some clarity on that. Are there a lot of people who live in the surrounding houses on Trenchard Road who go to the doctors in Poppleton?
I don't know any doctor's surgery near us. The nearest one that I know other than the Poppleton one is Artingale Lane. I could be wrong.
I'd suggest very wrong. There are several in between this development and there.
Yeah, but it's in Upper Poppleton. That development is in Upper Poppleton, and therefore, you know, the Poppleton surgery is the most logical one to go to, in my view.
Okay.
And a level crossing is only shut for about 6 minutes every hour. It's not really a big obstacle.
Okay. I don't see any other questions, so thank you for that, and thank you for joining us, Councillor Hook. Thank you. At this point, I wonder whether Mr. Grundy is in a position to rejoin us just to answer that specific question that we had referred to earlier.
Chair, it's Chris. I'm afraid we lost Mr. Grundy from the call.
Okay. If we do reconnect with him at a convenient point, let us just come back to get an answer to that. Or if it's possible, in some way, just to feed that information in, if we do get it. Okay.
Chair, sorry, it's Chris again. He has rejoined us in the waiting room. Just bear with me for 10 seconds.
I will be happy to do that.
Mr. Grundy should be on the line.
Okay. Mr. Grundy, have you rejoined us here? If you can hear me, please indicate.
I'm back on.
Good. Okay. So do you now have?
So, sorry, Chair.
Just will you? Yes. Will you make sure, Mr. Grundy, that you haven't got the meeting on in the background? Otherwise, it sets up a very unpleasant echo. Okay. Mr. Grundy, are you still there? Mr. Grundy.
Hello, thank you for your patience, Chair and Committee.
Okay. Are you now in a position to answer that specific question?
Yes, I am. And first
Excellent.
thing I'd like to clarify, I misspoke and referred to tenure of right to buy. It's actually rent to buy. And in terms of the tenure splits, it would be 60% social rented, 25% right to buy, and 15% shared ownership.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so having heard from our speakers, it may be that members have some further questions they want to put to officers. Do members have any questions? Councillor Popovic, you raise your hand for a moment. Thank you. And then Councillor Kilbane.
I did. Thank you,
Go
Chair.
ahead.
Yes,
all
thank
yours.
you, Chair. Just in respect of something that one of the public participants mentioned, that there was an agreement for 300 affordable houses on the British Sugar and Miller Homes site. I appreciate there's 80 on the Miller Homes site. How many affordable houses have been agreed with on the British Sugar site?
I'm just going to bring Jonathan in here, but as far as I'm aware, I don't think we've actually agreed the amount yet, have we, Jonathan?
No, there's a threshold that it can't go below 2%. So in the report we put it as the minimum would be 33 at British Sugar, but that could go up to 220 depending on viability.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Quite a
so
wide.
potentially
wide
113 on that site.
Yes, that's very much worst case scenario. But as we saw the British Sugar inquiry, it was expected that as the development went on, it became increasingly profitable. It was just a case of all the massive upfront costs, so it couldn't contribute initially.
Okay.
But they did demonstrate to the inspector that they'd be working towards 20 by the end.
Chair, Mike Slater again, just to say that from discussions with the developers and to reinforce what Jonathan said, we have a viability review mechanism. They did anticipate that potentially they would be policy compliant. It's a scheme that will be built out over some time.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane, I'm aware that we lost you for a short while. Can you just indicate how much you might have missed of our...
I missed the last couple of minutes of where is the doctor's surgery debate. I'm assuming it's not going to be that material, unless we found a doctor's surgery even closer that I need to be aware of. But I think that's all I missed. My question is to do with the right to buy. If we've got 60% social rented and 25% rent to buy, is it possible to condition the development so that those houses can then not be, if you enact your right to buy, can then not be sold on the open market at full value? Is that a possible thing to do?
I don't know the answer to that, I'm afraid. Jonathan, do you know the answer to that?
I don't think we do it that way. I think what happens is if we get to that stage and someone wants to sell off a house that was previously affordable, so it's not affordable in perpetuity, it's written into the legal agreement that at that point the council receives a payment to make up for it becoming a non-affordable house, if you like. So that's the way we would typically deal with it. We'd get like the equivalent of an off-site contribution, as it were, rather than it remaining affordable for perpetuity.
Thank you. I don't see any further questions, and if that is the case, then we can unless members are desperate for a break at this point, I think it would be good to press on to come to a conclusion on this, and then we'll take a good break between this item and the next one. Is that acceptable? Are we? I'm getting the thumbs up. Thank you. So as we move into debate, I wonder who might like to help us to move forward. I've got Councillor Lomas and Councillor Doughty and Councillor Waters. I'll take them in that order.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a couple of things to say, and I'll start by saying that I'm Ward Councillor for Acomb, and this site is very close to the border with my ward. The houses in Trenchard Road are the last houses in that ward and in Poppleton before Acomb Ward starts. So I am familiar with the site and with the area, which is why I could confidently say there are plenty of doctor's surgeries that are closer than Gale Lane and would be more accessible, I would say, than the Poppleton one, but I don't think that's particularly material. I find myself in great difficulty with this application because I absolutely recognise the need for affordable housing, particularly in this area, and the great disappointment that some of the other developments aren't offering more affordable housing in that area. So we've talked about the Civil Service Social Club land, we've talked about British Sugar land as well, and the relatively low numbers of social housing there. However, it is in Greenbelt. In the best description or assessment of Greenbelt that we can come to in the absence of the local plan, I think that the lack of a proper local plan has been a great difficulty to us all in many planning applications recently. Some questions that I have been asking myself during the discussion on this, during the presentation, during the public speakers, is what is the difference between a development on this side of Boroughbridge Road and the development on the opposite side? The development that is being proposed on this side simply extends the current development at Trenchard Road. It still leaves a gap, which the development on the other side of the road doesn't. And it doesn't further extend into the kind of green space gap between the development at Trenchard Road and the village area of Poppleton, and the development at Trenchard Road and the village area at Knapton. I find myself in some difficulty in considering the benefits of Greenbelt in this position. People who traverse Boroughbridge Road frequently will know that it's generally, most of the year, it is a muddy, wet field, which doesn't provide much in terms of openness or view because of its orientation and because of buildings around it that are at a higher level. It doesn't provide any amenity for local residents. And I find myself just thinking it's a deep shame that you couldn't use a joined up approach to retain green space that would have amenity for local residents by keeping a parkland on the site of the old Manor School fields that's going to be developed as part of British Sugar, that would be usable by local residents, and it, you know, transplant some of that development here. However, we're not in the realm of joined up thinking because we don't have a proper local plan that's considered all of these sites together. While I think that the open space and openness argument is debatable, I don't accept the sprawl argument because there clearly would be, in the plans that we've seen, there clearly would be green space. I do think that we have to be very mindful of the green belt and the rules around that, and I cannot, in everything that's been said, see the very special circumstances argument, and therefore I'd like to propose that we refuse.
It may well be that those have already indicated, specifically Councillor Doughty, Councillor Waters, Councillor Fisher, Councillor Fitzpatrick also. Were any of you about to say something similar, or are any of you willing to second that? I see Councillor Waters. Are you willing to second that?
Yeah, perfectly content to second that, Chair.
Okay. Then I think that I'll give opportunity briefly to Councillors Fisher, Fitzpatrick, unless they remove their hands. I see Councillor Fisher has removed his hand. Councillor Doughty, do you want to speak briefly?
I'm happy to move to the vote if members are minded to do that.
Okay. And Councillor Fitzpatrick and Pavlovic, are you also happy that we move to the vote?
Yes.
Yeah. Councillor Pavlovic.
Chair, I do think this warrants further debate personally, because I can't support the motion for refusal, and I wanted to be in a position to explain why I couldn't do that.
Do you want to do that briefly, and then we'll go to the vote?
That's fine. Thank you very much, Chair.
Of course, if the vote falls, then we'll have further debate.
Yes, no, absolutely. I totally understand that. I accept that this site falls within the green belt. I accept that therefore development within it would be inappropriate. However, the case that has been made up, notwithstanding what I felt were illogical comments in respect of the education provision, I do feel that York's need for affordable housing and affordable housing to be delivered very quickly do constitute very special circumstances. The lack of a 5-year housing supply and the failure of developers and the local authority to have developed sufficient affordable housing is such that there is a pressing need for genuinely social housing at social housing rent to be made available for the people of York, and therefore I won't be supporting the motion for refusal. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll move to the vote, and I'll just ask Becky, if you will, to be clearer so that we know exactly what we're being asked to do.
Thank you, Chair. So it's the reason for refusal that's outlined in your agenda, but also the additional reason for refusal with regard to education that is outlined on your additional information, please. Thank you
very much. Can I also check the members have been present throughout the debate? I know that we lost Councillor Kilbane, but I don't think that the conversations around the locations of GPs was terribly material. Did anybody else drop out at all? I didn't notice. No, please, we just indicate with a wave that you were able to follow everything. Thank you. That's great. That's great. So I invite, because it will be a named vote, I invite a member of the Democratic Service team to conduct that for us, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a vote for refusal. So if members could indicate whether they're for or against or abstaining in alphabetical order. So Councillor Baker.
For.
Councillor Daubney.
For.
Councillor Doughty.
For.
Councillor Douglas.
Against.
Councillor Fenton.
For.
Councillor Fisher.
For.
Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Against.
Councillor Hollier.
For.
Councillor Kilbane.
Councillor Kilbane? I think Councillor Kilbane is frozen for a moment. Maybe we could come back to his vote.
Councillor Lomas.
For.
Councillor Pavlovic.
Against.
Councillor Waters.
For.
Councillor Wardby.
For.
Councillor Widdowson.
For.
Can I go back to Councillor Kilbane?
Please do.
Yeah, sorry, I dropped out there. So the result of this is going to come as a complete surprise to me when they're all totted up. Against?
Thank you. And Chair?
That's 4.
So that's 11 for refusal, 4 against. So refusal is carried.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everybody. Before we move on to the next item on the plans list, time will be needed to bring in public speakers anyway. The time I make just about 10 minutes to 6. Can we reconvene at 6:15? 6:15. So just stay on screen for the moment. We'll be taken into the breakout room, and that will then give the technical team the opportunity to bring in further public speakers for the next item. Well, welcome back to this meeting of the City of York Council Planning Committee on Thursday, the 3rd of December 2020. We've come to agenda item 4B, Castle Mills Car Park Piccadilly, erection of 106 apartments, flexible commercial floor space, new pedestrian and cycle bridge across the River Foss, new public realm pedestrian and cycle route at Riverside North. I wonder whether we can have a presentation on this to just take us through this application, Becky.
No problem. Can I just do the additional information first
Please.
So again, members got this additional information earlier today. We have received further comments from York's Civic Trust, which are in support of the application. We've also received additional comments from Historic England, which states they've always been supportive of the overall aim and objectives of the Castle Gateway Master Plan. Okay, and we appreciate the complexity of this project, and we remain ready to work with your authority to find ways to make sure that benefits of a high quality public realm across the important park of York Central can be delivered. They also go on to say that they still have concerns with the heritage grounds regard to the size, scale, massing and detail of the northernmost apartment block, and it is therefore essential that justification for the scale and height of the proposed buildings is made explicit. However, they consider that the suggested planning condition may be an effective mechanism to ensure the difficult steps leading to the closure of Castle Park, car park, removal of the infrastructure to the creation of high quality public realm can be achieved. Again, their comments are in full around the additional information. The applicant has also given an additional statement that would like to emphasise the public benefits of the scheme and how it would help with how this site helps significantly unlocking the wider master plan. We've also got amended condition wording 45. So this states that there is a need to permanently close all ticket machines and associated car park signs, along with a detailed interim surface scheme to be submitted to and approved in writing before blocks A and B are occupied. Again, the condition in full is in the additional information. There's also a change to paragraph 6.4. 6.4 states that approval is recommended subject to conditions and undertaking of a legal agreement. This, however, should be subject to Grampian conditions. The council can enter into a legal agreement with itself. Therefore, Grampian conditions are recommended to secure the required mitigation. Put my teeth in. And it then goes on to say by way of a Grampian condition explanation, it's a negative worded condition that requires something, so that it says development shall not commence until a scheme has been. So we've got for the affordable housing, for the education provision, for public open space provision, and for play space and sports pitch. Is there anything else? Let me just double check. Did I say affordable housing?
You did.
And follow, right, okay. So that it's all in your additional information, but it's basically what you're using Grampian condition rather than a section 106. I'll go
Understood.
to the presentation now for you. Just a second. Oh, hang on. Slight issue there. Just bear with me 1 second. Got it back. Right. Okay, no problem. There we go. Can you see that? Can you all see that now?
We can.
My
That's fine.
initial
Thank you.
issue. Right. Okay. 2 seconds. So this is the site location plan that you can see in red. I'm just going to make my laser. So here you are. Here's the application site here in red. This is the proposed north elevation, which is block C, as you can see here. Proposed south elevation, block C, as you can see it here, with the new bridge clearly shown here, and again the difference in levels and the existing Rydale house in the background there. This is a proposed north elevation alongside Rydale House. Again, you can see the difference in heights in the building there. This is the proposed east elevation along Piccadilly. You can see there's Piccadilly along there and the different design and the level up here, along with the design of this block here. This is a south elevation, again, from the public plaza. You can see the other side of the bridge from here. And again, that elevation there. This is proposed west riverside elevation. So if you were, again, you can see a bit of the bridge there and the main block along with the other block that just sits there. This is the proposed site plan. You can see how there's a block that sits within here and the other buildings here with the new bridge across and into the public realm works in there. These are the, again, further floor plans. They're a bit too small for you to see in terms of details, but again, you can see the levels in there. And this is the proposed bridge elevations. You can see there, bridge to go along here. Obviously, the people give perspective there, and the new building in here. And again, the other elevation of the bridge there. That's the plan of the bridge and how big it'll be and exactly where it'll sit and how it'll link between the two sides. And again, that's the tree removal and retention plan here. And there's a visualization that I think was useful for members when we did the site visit. The visualizations from Clifford's Tower. You can just see it's over there in the, and again behind it there, just where my pointer is. And again, that's from the top of Clifford's Tower. Again, members saw this from the virtual site visit we did. And again, that building there. And again, you can see it from Fishergate over here. And there are visualizations from Piccadilly. If you were stood on Piccadilly looking at the scheme here. And that's if you were stood at Mill Street looking down to, that's Piccadilly that runs along here. And again, looking down at the development there. And that's the view from the existing bridge. Again, members saw this from the site visit looking across. This new pedestrian and vehicle, cycleway here, along with the new bridge and the development that you can see there. More visualizations of the bridge you can see. And that's if you were stood on the bridge. Again, you can see the details of the bridge that's been worked on. And again, okay, I'm going to stop sharing now and see if there's any questions, which I imagine there will be.
So I'm waiting to see if there are questions from members. First hand I see is Councillor Kilbane.
Thank you, Chair. It's actually a question for the Conservation Architect.
Yeah, he's here. David, can you come on for us, please? Thank you.
Yes. David Carruthers, Conservation Architect.
Hi, thanks for coming tonight. Your presence is greatly appreciated.
Thanks for inviting me.
In terms of your objections to it, I'm looking at the visualizations, and I just need to get my head around this because it seems to be an in-between. You're objecting to the height and looming over the heritage assets, and it seems to be an in-between height in between the Rydale building and the Wetherspoons, the hotel there on the corner. So it seems to step down, and I'm just wondering why that's such a problem.
So it does step down, but the benefit at the moment is that in a number of views of the female prison, the Castle Museum, it is prominent because behind it is sky. And Rydale House has already been identified in the conservation area appraisal as having a negative impact because it looms over. And my opinion is that the new development will perpetuate this looming over and create a sort of wall-like effect between Rydale House and the Travelodge.
Do continue, Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. So if it was the same height as the travel lodge, would that be okay?
I estimate that if you were to lose a story, it would make a difference. It's basically when you look at, I think Becky was showing a view from the top of Clifford's Tower that best illustrates.
Yeah, I've got
that. So it would be a height that doesn't create that kind of continuation between Rydale House and the travel lodge.
Can I just ask, apart from that specific view from the height of Clifford's Tower, is there any other position from which that would be an issue?
In my opinion, and as I've put in my assessment, there are a number of other views that would be where the development would have a negative impact on heritage significance.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Pavlovic, then Councillor Daubney. I've noticed you, Councillor Waters. I will come to you in a moment.
Excuse me. Thank you, Chair. And I think I'm going to continue the theme raised by Councillor Kilbane with David Carruthers. It's not often, I think, that this committee sees an assessment of a report quite so scathing. You make certain comments such as the assessment of significance is weak as it underestimates the level of harm that will be caused to the significance by the scale of the proposal. The importance of historic relationships between places identified by Historic England has not been taken into consideration of the design of the proposals. Where do you think that this report is lacking, and what do you feel should have been incorporated within the report?
Councillor, it's my role to only comment on the heritage aspects of things, as you know.
Yes.
And so therefore, it's my duty to put the point across in terms of the heritage assets. I believe there is sufficient information in that document for me to comment, but I would have liked further information to support my objection, basically. So there is sufficient information that's been supplied for me to say that I believe the proposal is too tall and that the massing is too great, but I would have liked additional information, and that's what I've put in my assessment to reinforce my objection.
Can I ask,
please do,
just a couple of supplementaries? So your view is that Rydale House, as it currently exists, is a negative element. This development, notwithstanding that it's 2 meters shorter, is that correct? Is it 2 meters shorter? Because I'm sure I've read somewhere that that's one of the assessments, that it's 2 meters shorter rather than a lot shorter. Will make the impact of Rydale House markedly larger, essentially, by making the whole block one negative aspect.
I think, Councillor, that sums it up, really. It's the cumulative effect. So it's not just my opinion. The conservation area appraisal makes it clear that if the opportunity to lose Rydale House came along, then it should be taken. That Rydale House looms over. It was the conservation area appraisal that uses the term loom, and I reiterated in my assessment in relation to the proposal. So Rydale House is assessed as having a negative impact on setting, and I believe, in my opinion, that the proposed development will perpetuate that harm.
You said you had another point, Councillor Pavlik, if you make it quickly.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So if the building was a story smaller, shorter, would that negative impact be mitigated? Would it be completely removed? Would the looming element over the women's prison and the Castle Museum, would that satisfy where you're coming from?
So, Councillor, it would mitigate, but I don't think it would remove all the harm. But in the planning balance, that might be something that makes a significant difference from the heritage point of view. Having said that, without seeing an amended visualization, it's difficult for me to say for certain.
Okay.
Can I just ask one further question and then I'll shut up? It's just whilst we've got David here, that's the only.
Absolutely. But I might remind you of that promise later.
That's it. I'm zipped. After this, I'm zipped. Just from where this leaves the city and where this leaves you in future, do we now create a new base level height, essentially, within the city centre?
Councillor, I don't think that's for me to comment.
Well, no. Would you have a difficulty in objecting to another application that also loomed over if it were 8-storey?
Councillor, I'm not sure that's an appropriate question. And we're looking at this application. We're not looking at other applications. Councillor Daubney. And then I'll come to Councillor Waters before Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to ask officers something about the appearance and the materials used in the bridge design. Can somebody comment on those, please?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute then. What specifically are you wanting to know, just so I know what are you wanting to know about the bridge?
I'm just a bit concerned, Becky, that it might it has a kind of rusty iron appearance to it, which I'm not sure fits in terribly well with the new buildings all around it.
I think, well, we've had significant discussions about that has included the team leader within the design team, who's specifically asked about the design of that. You all know Guy Hansen, and we've worked with the applicant and the case officer have worked with Guy to try and achieve a design that we felt was the most appropriate, and it was felt that it needed to be something quite simple, given that where it sits within the heritage grounds, and it's got specific punched out parts of it to enable you to be able to see through. So that's come through quite a lot of negotiation to get to that design, and that's what officers consider to be the most appropriate design and materials for that site.
Okay, so the appearance of rusted steel is how it will be, is it?
I don't know for certain. Rachel, are you in the background? Do you know the exact material? Rachel's the case officer, just to Rachel Tyre.
Yeah, Rachel Tyres, Development Management Officer. I'm afraid I don't know the exact material. I can only reiterate what Becky had said. It's been worked on to be as simple as possible with that visibility, so users of the bridge can see the river. I can check that for you.
Yeah, leave that with us and we'll get you an answer.
Yeah, I don't have any concerns about its design, merely the kind of rusty appearance of it, and it might look rather old and neglected, even when it's brand new, if that's the case.
If that's an issue, we can condition that the materials are submitted, and if you don't want the rust, but if you're okay with the design, the actual materials itself, we can absolutely look at.
Thank you.
Councillor Lomas, is this about the bridge? Go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I thought it was probably the right time to come in on this. It is more about the design of the bridge, because I note that there's been a few comments made about being able to see and have views from it, and it wasn't very clear from the diagrams. Will people who are smaller, such as children, shorter adults, and people who get around using a wheelchair, will they have views? Because the design looked to me as though it would prevent views from those who have a lower line of sight.
Just going to share my screen just to show you it, because it has been,
Thank you.
we did discuss this at length. Just a minute. So can you see that there? So if you see, there's punched through, obviously there's this area here, but there is this punched through areas where it will be able to, yes, it will be limited views, but that was specifically incorporated for that reason.
Okay, so
okay.
I'm not sure what a view you would get from
it. I'm not saying it'll be a massive view, but it's better than if it was solid, is where we went for that. It was a compromise to be able to still have the simple design and allow the bridge to function as it should.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. Just going back to David Carruthers, I get exactly where he's coming from when he mentioned the view from Clifford's Tower, and I think it'd be very helpful if that view was put back up on the screen so that it could sink in with everybody what he was talking about. And that is the walling effect and the virtual merging in when you look from that Clifford's Tower region of the Castle Museum. It just looks like a solid wall of buildings now. Is it possible to put that view back up on screen?
Just give me a second. I'm trying to load it. Just a second.
Okay. When we've done that, I'll come to Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Fenton.
Well,
can you see that now?
We can.
Perfect.
Councillor Waters, did you want to highlight anything in particular?
Well, what I would like is David Carruthers to come back in and talk us through that. And there's another view as well that shows it just as well.
So it's the point you made, Councillor, and the point I've already made, and in my assessment that it's perpetuating the harm caused by Rydale House and the stepping down effect towards the travel lodge. You basically create a wall effect that provides a backdrop to the Castle Museum, the women's prison, and from a heritage significance point of view, the Castle Museum women's prison should be dominant in terms of its, or as dominant as it can be at the moment. It's a Grade 1 listed building, and part of its historic value is that it should be dominant in views. And I believe that the proposed development will reduce that dominance.
Can I just point something out in terms of this visualization? Is the mass expanse of car park that you can see here that also has a detrimental impact on the area, and this proposal will include the removal of that. So that I just thought it was important just to illustrate that to you as part of this. And also that is from the top of Clifford's Tower, but obviously if you look in, this is lower down the tower, as you can see. I'm just for illustration purposes.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, if I can come back, that last slide shows it in an even worse light. But I'd just like to go back and ask some more questions of David Carruthers.
Go ahead. Do continue with your questions.
Is he back on screen? Or?
He's there. Yes, sir. He's fine.
Right. Are these the similar concerns expressed by Historic England then, as to that height massing and that walling effect?
Not having Historic England's specific objections in front of me, but the point that Becky made at the beginning of the meeting where she was talking about the additional comments from Historic England, they do, I believe, talk about massing and having concerns about the massing.
Right, and this is probably the most important question I'll ask you. What discussions are taking place between the Castle Gateway promotional team, the people that's been leading this scheme, and your department, either you directly or Guy Hansen, where we've ended up at this point where there's such a strong objection from the council's own heritage team to the council's own application that from memory, I recall reading it, that £2 million already been spent on the design and the promotion and the consultation into all this. How have we ended up at this state of affairs?
I think can I come in? That's a question for
Yes.
me, really, not David.
I think it is. Do you want to respond, Becky?
Yes,
well,
please.
all I'm asking is what correspondence has taken place between that department and the team leading this.
Becky, if you'll respond, please.
Yes, no problem. It's a whole dialogue that has taken place, including meetings where there has been discussions, but also as part of that, and as very clearly outlined in the case officer's report, is that there is the planning balance to consider. David's job is to advise on, he's a conservation architect, is to advise on the conservation aspects of this. We've also, as the case officer does, is to weigh up everything that goes with that and come to a planning balance. So it's not that we're not listening, we've taken everything that everybody has said into account and then come to a planning balance to make the recommendation that you have now got to. It's not that nobody's not been listening. Thank you.
But with respect, you're dealing with the planning aspects of the application. I'm asking why the design and consultation team haven't addressed the concerns of the council's own heritage team during the process prior to the application.
That's for you to ask the applicant.
Councillor Waters, I think we've probably covered that. Councillor Fisher and then Councillor Fenton.
Thank you, Chair. Becky Eads has already brought up the issue that I actually wanted to ask the conservation architect. That was particularly evident in the view from the top of Cliffords Tower, which I've been looking at quite a lot on Google Maps. Would you say that the new building is a bigger detractor from the heritage assets than the Castle car park, which sits right at the foot of them?
That's part of the planning balance that we've made in terms
No,
of.
that's asking David Carruthers.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry,
I thought you were me. Sorry.
To do a relative appraisal of the harm to the heritage assets of this new building, which is 250 metres away, or the Castle car park, which is right at the foot of Cliffords Tower.
Well, I'm going to temper my answer with something I mentioned in my assessment from the conservation area appraisal, where it talks about the loss of the car park and the loss of Rydale House as being both beneficial in terms of heritage significance. It doesn't say which is more important, but it does say both of them make a difference and would improve the situation in terms of the heritage. In my opinion, the development I think would be more harmful than the car park.
Can I just say I totally disagree with that point of view?
Well, this isn't a debate. You asked for an opinion, Councillor Fenton.
It is my opinion.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzpatrick.
Thank you. I want to come back to the bridge, if I may. Given the other bridges that are on the Foss in the vicinity, I mean, we've got the lovely old one on Fossgate, the original bridge there, which is like a Monet bridge, very attractive. And then we've got the Hungate Bridge, which is a nice light semicircular bridge that you can quite clearly see either side. Why have we ended up with something quite so bland? And I agree with the comments that other councillors have made about not being able to see if you're in a wheelchair and whatever. I just think that we're talking about heritage and whatever else there. That area of the Foss in the summertime with the lilies out and the geese and the swans or whatever, and the willow overriding. I mean, it can be so attractive. And why is it going to be spoilt with something quite straight and bland like that bridge? What other considerations were taken into account in choosing that bridge? Because I certainly haven't looked at the other bridges that are on the Foss.
I think I explained that one previously, that it was simple design was best.
I think we've covered that as best we can for the moment.
Well, I don't know what best means, but
okay. We may well return to this as we debate things later. Councillor Fenton, I owe you an apology. I think I had said I'd come to you sooner, but please take the opportunity now.
I was just wanting to clarify something with David Carruthers. In reading the section of the report that he's authored, he talks about the development and causing cumulative harm to heritage assets at a level that would be considered less than substantial. The harm would be less than substantial. I just wanted to check that that's still his view. Thank you.
It's still my view, Councillor.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
I have no other questions at the moment, so thank you for that. We can then move on to our public speakers. We have a number who've registered to speak. I'm hoping, therefore, that Chris Donagani, I hope I pronounced that correctly. Chris Donagani, are you able to address us? Chris Donagani, are you, can you hear me?
Hi, Chair, it's Chris.
Yes.
Meeting host. Yeah, just bear with them. They did take a few of the speakers a couple of minutes.
That's
there we
not
go.
a problem. Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Forgive me if I didn't pronounce your name correctly. Chris Donagani, you want to speak in objection. You've got up to 3 minutes to address the committee. And if we get close to that, I'll just give you a sort of warning of the time. But please go ahead.
Hello. Although I'm full agreement with your conservation architect about the harm to the Eye of Yorkshire area, I would like you also to consider the harm to Piccadilly and the Warmgate area. The large 8-storey building will dominate the area. Piccadilly and the flats opposite will become dark, dismal and canyon-like, with limited sunlight reaching the ground. Note that no assessment of sunlight hours and shading levels on Piccadilly has been provided with the application. The ground floor design of the northern building is poor. That's the larger building. Because no on-site service area is provided, all the service functions face Piccadilly. This means less than 50% of the building facing Piccadilly is allocated to commercial space. The rest is just blank walls and outward opening doors directly onto the pavement. It also means a lay-by for service vehicles has provided on Piccadilly, removing the option of a dedicated cycle lane which could stretch from the new bridge down Piccadilly to Merchant Gate. The narrowness, 7 to 8 metre entrance from Piccadilly to the square is badly designed. The width seems to have been determined by Yorkshire Water's minimum requirements. The narrow entrance to the square from Piccadilly will be a place of conflict with diverging cycle and pedestrian routes, with no space for proper segregation. In addition, putting a road lay-by across the entrance for refuse vehicles, which will no doubt be used by taxis, delivery and maintenance vehicles, will block the cycle route towards Mill Street and force cyclists onto the pavement. By removing the square to the minimum possible size, the opportunity for proper planting has been lost. Instead, there are just 2 or 3 small trees in pots. In addition, the southern building blocks one of the area's last remaining views of the castle area from Mill Street, adding to the harm done to the area. This development by the council represents a lost opportunity for the Piccadilly and Warmgate communities, lost opportunity for the last connection between Piccadilly and the River Foss, lost opportunity for a cycle lane down Piccadilly, loss of the view of the cupola from Mill Street, which of course is the last remaining view of the castle from the area, and a lost opportunity for a relaxing public square. It could be so much better. I ask you to reject these proposals. In planning terms, how can the harm to Piccadilly and Warmgate area be balanced against the possible gain of a car park, which has been deferred, and an improvement to the castle area public realm, which at present has not been designed, costed, or even approved? In planning terms, the existing harm done by the castle car park can be easily removed in the future by closing it. But just like Rydell House, the harm caused to Piccadilly and the historic castle area by this proposal will not be so easy to remove in the future. To approve this application, you need to be sure that it does no long-term harm to this important historical area. Do you want this to be your legacy?
Thank you. Are there any questions from members? Do stay with us, please, if you will. And just in case there are questions, I don't see any questions from members. So thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for making
Chair,
the
it's
the
Chris,
points.
meeting host.
Yes.
Councillor Waters has hand up.
Oh, sorry, I missed you, Councillor Waters. I didn't see that. I was too focused on the blue hands.
Thank you, Chair. It's not so much a question to the gentleman. It's just thanking him for bringing up the point about the servicing arrangements and, well, I was going to say frontage onto Piccadilly. It's more like the back entrance onto Piccadilly. I just wonder whether officers would care to comment on those points that's been raised, and specifically with regard to the street trees that's supposed to go in on the Piccadilly frontage.
Okay, can we allow officers to pick that up as we come to the end of the public speakers? Okay, so thank you. I don't see any other questions from members. So, Ms. Donagani, by all means, continue to watch this on the live stream, but you'll be leaving the meeting at this moment. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Our second speaker is Andy Kerr, in support on behalf of the applicant. Andy, are you with us?
I am, yes, thank you, Chair.
Excellent, excellent. Would you take the opportunity, please, to address the committee, and as you, I'm sure, are aware, up to 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'm Andy Kerr, Head of Regeneration for City of York Council. Castle Mills is the key site in delivering the regeneration of a Castle Gateway. It locks in the closure of Castle Car Park and provides a commercial return that will allow the future decision on how to provide replacement parking to be taken. It also includes and directly delivers many of the public benefits of the master plan. The site will provide a new pedestrian cycle bridge over the River Foss and a crossing over the Inner Ring Road to link up strategic active travel routes from the city centre to the south and the west. To reassure committee, the design has been revised to allow views from children and people in wheelchairs over the bridge. It also includes the creation of a new Riverside Park that will open up an area to the public that is currently only accessible to paying visitors to the Castle Museum. On the Piccadilly side of the river, 2 new high-quality apartment blocks will provide 106 new homes on a disused city centre brownfield site, including new affordable housing that will be retained and managed by the council's housing department. Sustainability is at the heart of the project, with a commitment to meet the draft local plan's 28% carbon reduction target and taking the lead in providing a car-free development. The council will be the developer for the site, with the commercial return from the sale of the remaining apartments being used to fund the delivery of the significant public benefits of the wider master plan. Without that commercial return, the master plan is unviable. Even the loss of a single storey would reduce the commercial return by 2.5 million, significantly increasing the 4.5 million council funding that is required to deliver the master plan. The team working on the project have created a high quality piece of architecture that sits within its surroundings and the changing nature of Piccadilly. The evolution of the plans have seen a positive response to discussions on scale and massing, including the loss of a storey and a top floor apartment, the creation of an articulated roofscape to better reflect York's historic skyline, and multiple design changes and refinements to improve the overall quality. Historic England, the Civic Trust and the Conservation Architects agreed that the application causes less than substantial harm. Given the harm is less than substantial, the planning officer is of the view that the significant public benefits of a new bridge, Riverside Park, the role of a scheme in funding the wider master plan, and the direct link to the removal of a car park at the base of Clifford's Tower outweighs this. We remain strongly of the view that the removal of Castle Car Park, that is universal support, has a far more positive impact on the area's heritage than the visibility of Castle Mills from Clifford's Tower. Historic England are reassured that the public benefits are significant and that they are secured by the proposed planning conditions. And as you have heard earlier, the Civic Trust, and also we've spoken to the Civic Trust, they've submitted comments to you as committee, which also fully support the planning officer view that these benefits outweigh the less than significant harm. I hope the committee can support the planning officer's recommendation for approval, and myself, the architect and planning consultant, can answer any further questions before you go into debate.
Thank you very much. I've already got Councillor Widdowson and Councillor Fenton and Councillor Lomas. Councillor Widdowson first.
Chair, I've got 3 questions, so if you want to go to the others as well. So I'll do the first question and then can I do 2 others? Is that okay?
Ask your first question and we'll see whether the others are picked up by others and come back to you if not.
I'd like to know, has the scheme gone as small as possible without losing, or is this building gone as small as possible without losing the entire scheme for regenerating that side of the city?
Okay, so we did start with a larger scheme, which we have reduced in size as we've gone through the process. We've tried to respond to the Rydale House and Travel Lodge, and we've stepped down into that space. This is a master plan that is predominantly public realm and public benefit related. There is not a lot of commercial development to help pay for that public benefit. This is one of the few sites that enables us to do that, and what we've had to balance is ensuring that we are ensuring there is a commercial return that makes the master plan viable. And as I said before in my speech, the loss of a story does result in around £2.5 million loss in terms of the financial contribution this can make to the delivery of the master plan. That said, I think we feel very strongly as applicants that we feel the scheme does fit within its context and has been designed to that extent. We appreciate the views over seeing it over the top of Clifford's Tower, but we were of the view that that would require the loss of significant stories to the scheme, which would drive it to a point where it ceases to be viable as a project on its own, and then hinders and basically stops the ability to regenerate the whole area by bringing the master plan to a point of being unviable as well.
So that's a yes. It's as small as it can go.
Yes, is our view, yes.
Councillor Widdowson, I will come back to you if you still have questions when I've turned to others, but as you'd given me that opportunity. Councillor Fenton, then Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at page 69 of the report, there was some comments from the Guildhall Planning Panel, and one of the issues they raised was a potential conflict between cyclists and pedestrians on the ramp to the bridge, I think from the open space. So I was really wanting to ask if that's an issue that you've picked up, and has any thought been given to mitigating measures in terms of perhaps measures to for example, minimise the speed of cycles that might be using that route, just in terms of minimising that potential conflict in that space between pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Yeah, so the design of the bridges and the public space, it creates sort of natural meander through the space. So that's one of the key ways that you can slow cyclists by not having long straight runs. Also, the design of the space is very much linked to the redesign of Piccadilly, which where the public square comes out into that area will be a traffic calmed area with speed tables. So considerable sort of engagement has taken place with both those cycling groups who are going to use it. We've done a huge amount of engagement through the My Castle Gateway project and through our bridge designers to try and ensure that we're doing that. And I don't know if Steve Marshall, my architect, just wants to add anything on the design of the actual bridge and how we sought to mitigate those concerns.
Yeah, hi, it's Steve Marshall here. Yeah, and as Andy says, we did work with the cycling lobby group. We ran through the design of the bridge from their perspective. So the width of the bridge is designed to the standards required for a bridge that would be shared between pedestrians and cyclists. And then as the pedestrians and cyclists and the bridge lands on the Castle Mills site, the footpath and the cycleway widens out gradually. You'll see that in the surface treatment. So there's a widening beyond the sort of minimum required standards to a wider standard. And I think based on the sort of government guidance as well, the guidance there shows how really cyclists behave and pedestrians behave in a shared surface like this. So, as Andy says, the meandering nature of the route through the space it does tend to naturally slow down cyclists and pedestrians anyway.
Thank you. I will come to Councillor Lomas shortly, but Councillor Kilbane, you seem to have a supplementary here.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Can I just clarify? Are you saying that the cycling infrastructure is LTM 120 compliant?
Yeah, so LTM 120 does allow shared spaces in when you've got bridges or cycle paths over a certain width, which we're achieving in this space. The actual choice of a shared cycle pedestrian was actually done with cycling groups and was the preference on the whole of how cyclists felt the area would work best. And we did a huge amount of workshops with those cycling groups to try and design this space. There is differences of opinions, obviously, around segregated cycle paths and shared spaces. But again, thinking of reducing the speed speed of cyclists and the meander of this, it felt that a shared surface was a better solution, and then does have that compliance with that LTN 120 being the width of 4 metres plus, does allow shared spaces in public parks and bridges.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. In your contribution, you said that the bridge had been redesigned to allow views for people in wheelchairs and children. Are you, in saying that, are you referring to the punching of the holes in the sheet metal?
No, so the punching of the holes in the sheet metal is part of that. But if you actually look at the images, we've actually reduced the parapet height of the bridge down. The bridge does have to have a minimum parapet height because it's used by cyclists, so obviously as a safety feature. But what we've actually done is taken that parapet down and installed sort of more of a railing solution, which will allow those views. And that was in direct response to issues raised by the council's design officer to ensure that we were creating those views for all people.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, you stated that removal of a story would cost 2.5, lose 2.5 million. Can I make reference to paragraphs 548 on page 84 specifically? You state that the financial return from the sale of the apartments which would be in the region of £35 million, the major funding source for phase 1 of the master plan, and will be dedicated to fund the construction of the proposed multi-storey car park at St George's Field. You then go on to say in paragraph 549 that the castle, the multi-storey car park has been delayed for a period of time. One, because of a decision made by this planning committee for an assessment of car parking, but second, to until you're ensured of the full impact of COVID on car parking. So if the castle, if the multi-storey car park is not going to proceed, then would losing a story make that much difference to the viability of the scheme? I'm trying to understand why you feel that 8 stories is the only viable option for this scheme.
Okay, so I mean, in terms of I think the executive position is that there'll be replacement car parking needs to be provided to allow Castle Car Park to happen. Under any scenario, and obviously at the moment we've proposed a multi-storey car park at St George's Field, but that's not been determined yet. So clearly that isn't necessarily happening until that point in time. Our planning committee would be comfortable in reconsidering that application. However, to provide replacement car parking or to mitigate the loss of parking revenue, you need to have a viable master plan, and you have to have the ability to be able to fund that through some form. What this application does is absolutely closes Castle Car Park, because there is a planning condition directly linked to that before occupation of these apartments, Castle Car Park would have to close. What the revenue that would be generated from this scheme will allow those future decisions to be taken as to whether that's a multi-storey car park or an alternative replacement parking source. But there's already a viability gap in the master plan, and a significant one, to provide the replacement car parking as proposed now. And if it was an alternative parking solution that came along, or something to bridge a loss of revenue, there is still a viability gap in the actual master plan, and to make that any bigger would start to threaten the viability of the overall master plan.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, please. Councillor Baker, we're not hearing you. Maybe you just need to. Okay, we'll come back to you in a moment. Hopefully we can restore the sound there. So Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Chair. Andy, I was just wondering if you could speak to what water safety considerations and mitigation is going to be put in along the river here, because the development, if it goes ahead, will open up that area of the river, and at the moment there isn't really any way of somebody getting out if they fall in. Can you talk to that, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, accessibility to rivers brings a huge number of benefits, but it also brings risks and dangers. We've done a huge amount of work again through the My Castle Gateway project and York Riverboat, and working with those to examine water safety and how we live well with water. There's that balance between obviously fencing off our water sides and some of the negatives that does in disconnecting the public's ability to engage with the river, but then it's also around safety. So, well, it's ensuring that you've got points of access. Obviously, we're at a point where that's getting planning permission, but some of those detailed designs of how that access is done is absolutely something we'll continue to work with York Riverboat and make sure that we're trying to ensure that this is an exemplar.
Thank you. Councillor Baker, do we?
Hi, yeah.
Again, great, thank you. Yes, thank you. Please ask your question.
So, thank you. Yes, I'm afraid I'm going back to talking about the space between the two buildings. And I know you explained quite a lot, Andy, about how you've consulted a lot with the cycle campaign and made it the best it can be for shared use. But that sounded to me like it's ended up as mostly just a cycle route. And like one of the public speakers said, you know, it's a missed opportunity for it to be a public park. And in the documents, the landscape architect has said that there really should be means of introducing more vegetation. And I just wondered why there isn't more, or how we could secure more green landscaping between the two buildings in the form of a park, rather than just the paving, to make it, you know, more appealing to more people than just ending up as a cycle route.
Yeah, so it does create a pocket park, and obviously York's got these parks which then emerge out into little spaces. It creates that riverside park as well on that side of the river. Obviously, there's the park on the other side of the river, which is heavily a green space, and will provide that green space amenity, which currently is behind a paywall for the museum. The pocket park itself, we're trying to create spaces that can be used by people all year round as well, and potentially whether there could be some outdoor seating with payment cafe licenses for some of the commercial spaces. We try and create those active frontages as well. So, but I mean, in terms of the actual design of that space, we'd be more than happy to work to make more vegetation in there as we go through the process. Definitely, we want to create spaces that work for everybody. So happy to do that.
Okay, thank you for that. And Councillor Widdowson.
Andy, I'd just like you to tell us how much public consultation has been involved inside of this scheme.
Yeah, so the My Castle Gateway public engagement, obviously it covers the whole master plan. That's led to the master plan proposals, what the use of the whole area is, but it's also helped us to try and shape these sites. I mean, I think going back to it, some of the original ideas were for this site as a multi-storey car park, and actually in response to public engagement, that's where we looked at elsewhere, and that this has become a key part of the creating the public routes through the area, and with the new bridge and the Riverside Park. It's continued to shape the design as we've gone through. Obviously, when you come to build out a scheme such as this, you've got a huge amount of different views you have to weigh up from the public, from different, from the heritage side, from planning officer side, water safety side, all those things. But we've continued to have a number of events, use social media. We hosted a huge number of events where people could come, view, visit the plans. We move those around the city, and we've done far more than I would say a developer ordinarily would do. And the conversation continues. My Castle Gateway is an ongoing project where we continue to engage people in trying to come up with the best possible schemes we can.
I have a supplementary if it's possible.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay, there's only been one public speaker, which has got to be testament to the great work that you've done. How do you feel about that, Andy?
I mean, I think everybody's views are valid. Obviously, the public speaker tonight, somebody we've engaged with a lot through the process, and we've made some changes. We've not been able to meet on everything, but I mean, I think it is testament that we've got one speaker against this proposal tonight. I'd like to think that reflects well on the process that we've gone through.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Baker, we lost you weren't able to communicate with us. I hope you didn't miss out on what was being said.
No, it's all fine, thank you. I can
Good,
still hear.
excellent. Councillor Pavlovic, you've had your hand still raised. Is that because you have a further question? No, okay. Then thank you very much, Andy, for joining us there, and for the others who made themselves available, both Duncan Mackay and Steve Marshall. Thank you.
Sorry,
The
Chair.
Waters,
Sorry, Councillor Waters is got his
I've done
hand
it
up, sorry.
again. I've done it again. Please forgive me, Councillor Waters. I'm not deliberately excluding you here.
Don't worry, I'm not.
You have to get some alternative blue hand or something.
Yeah. Going back to Andy Kerr, despite all that consultation, then we've still ended up with a position that our own heritage architect is so deeply unhappy with this scheme that he's objected in the strongest possible terms. What efforts were made to mitigate his concerns in the past? And will you care to confirm that they could never be mitigated because the height of the building is purely a commercial decision?
Okay, I mean, I think one important point to make is that obviously David's view is that the harm is less than substantial. It's not it's not saying that the harm is substantially, saying it's less than substantial, and that's an important point to make. We've met regularly internally with the heritage officers and with all internal officers to try and do those pre-application discussions. We've also been guided very much by Historic England. The Historic England National Panel have actually visited as well and looked around the scheme and given their view. The Civic Trust have been a key member of the Castle Gateway Advisory Group. There's some difference of opinions amongst those different heritage groups about which element of the heritage is most important, and we've had to try and weigh that up and come to a proposal. Commercial is one driver, but again, I think we're very much strongly of the view as a design team, but this scheme that we're proposing today is of a good and high quality, and it does fit well within the context of the site. And I think we strongly believe that our heritage consultants are of the view as well on that basis. So I think we have engaged, absolutely. There have been some differences of agreement where they have. Wherever we possibly could, we've taken the views on board and we've revised the design of the scheme as we've gone through that process.
Okay, I think that question's been answered. Thank you. So Andy, thank you, and no doubt you'll continue to watch the remainder of this meeting.
Thank you, Chair.
We have a further public speaker, Chris Bush from York Bid, who I understand wants to speak in support. Chris, are you there? Are you able to?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Excellent. We can hear you. You have the opportunity to address the committee for up to 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. So to clarify, I'm speaking on behalf of York Business Improvement District, often referred to as York Bid, and that's in support of the Castle Mills planning application. I plan to speak briefly, and I do not profess to have any detailed knowledge of the application itself. However, the Business Improvement District recognises the importance of this development to the wider Castle Gateway project, which is deemed to be an important regeneration for the city as a whole. As part of the Castle Gateway Advisory Group, the BID has been involved in the development of the scheme and the wider master plan from the start, and welcomes the amount of engagement and collaborative working that has gone into the proposal. Everyone on this call will be aware of the impact that COVID-19 has had on York's business community, as well as the community at large. In the centre of York, we've seen a number of businesses close in both the retail and hospitality sectors. Despite this, many of you will be also aware that COVID has accelerated some of the changes we were likely to see in York anyway. It is considered a fact that the traditional retail floor print that York has been operating on for over a decade, moving back, needs to evolve as it does in many other cities around the UK. Local authorities and partners have the significant challenge now of repurposing city spaces with a balanced mix of retail, hospitality, leisure and residential. We feel several elements of this development respond directly to this need for repurposing, namely the new and affordable housing, the ground floor commercial space that will provide opportunities for York's thriving independent sector, new sustainable transport links, including a new pedestrian and cycle bridge that will help link the site to other parts of the city, and the regeneration of Piccadilly itself, including the refurbishments of some sites which are currently derelict. The challenges are not easy, especially in historic cities like ours, but most people agree the sense of community needs to be at the heart of any master plan. So we at York Bid believe that the plan demonstrates the council's clear commitment to supporting the city centre through a challenging economic recovery following COVID-19. We also believe that York has the pipeline projects to enable the city to build back better. So York Central, the station frontage project, and today's planning application for Castle Mills are all opportunities that many other cities would be envious of. We understand that Castle Mills is an essential element of the wider Castle Gateway master plan and is hugely important for the regeneration of this part of the city centre. Some of the regeneration that has already taken place around the Piccadilly area, including temporary projects like Spark, has enhanced this important gateway to the city. It has also benefited businesses on the likes of Warmgate and Fossgate and helped them to shape their own identity. So moving forward, this regeneration will help to keep this momentum and eventually unlock the wider Castle Gateway master plan and the enhanced public realm benefits that come with it. And that is all I wanted to say today. So thanks for listening.
Well, thank you for your contribution. Bear with us for a moment. I'm looking to see if there are any questions, which there are not. So you'll be leaving us at this point, but please do continue to watch through the live stream.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Andrew Morrison from the York Civic Trust. Can you hear me, Mr. Morrison?
I can, Chair. Thank you very much.
And we can hear you,
so
please go ahead and address the committee.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm Andrew Morrison. I'm speaking as Chief Executive of York Civic Trust. I represent York Civic Trust on the Castle Gateway Advisory Group, and I'm speaking in support of the Castle Mills car park application, particularly from a heritage perspective. In reading the submitted comments and the committee report linked to this planning application, I can understand the concern in a lot of the detail of the objections with regards to the heritage impact. I agree with the comments that the proposed buildings will, in part, be visible across the River Foss above the female prison and from certain viewpoints above the debtors' prison, and that this will have a less than substantial impact on their visual setting. In our opinion, though, there is a surplus of heritage benefit within this planning application when one takes a wider viewpoint. In opening up access and providing a fresh focus for residents and visitors, firstly to the River Foss, one of the city's most underused and underappreciated significant assets, and secondly providing opportunities for access, awareness and engagement with the most significant surviving remnants of the York's medieval castle walls and 18th to 20th century areas of river trade and industry. Parts of York's heritage that are not normally reflected in much of the traditional narrative that is used to represent our city, but for which there is a proven appetite amongst audiences that the consultation for the Castle Gateway project has shown. The fact that this will be undertaken as a free public amenity without a pay barrier, thus creating opportunities for widening participation and enriched engagement in our heritage amongst much more diverse audiences, is, in my opinion, of real heritage benefit. But for me, the greatest heritage benefit is the huge gain from the applicant's commitment to reinvest the commercial return from this development to ultimately remove the Castle car park and deliver the Castle Gateway master plan. I think that the City of York Council should be applauded for constructing a financial model that sees this development directly lead to the ultimate removal of the Castle car park through the delivery of the Castle Gateway master plan from its hugely damaging position within the immediate setting of some of York's most iconic and important heritage buildings and structures, something that a private developer would not be able to accomplish. With the removal of, in our opinion, this enormously damaging facility, both to the heritage and the environment, along with its subsequent reinstatement as public realm, there will be the conditions for a step change in public engagement and participation in the heritage of York. It is with this potential benefit that I speak in support of this application. Whilst I take very seriously the impact of the development on the visual setting of the 18th century prison buildings, we have come down in favour of the heritage benefit of being positive that this development offers for the residents of York. York Civic Trust takes the view that the greatest amount of harm imposed on York's nationally significant heritage assets is the presence of the Castle car park, its associated infrastructure and vehicular traffic. We have for a number of decades been a strong advocate and invested heavily in seeking solutions to negate this damage to our heritage and also deliver the greatest public benefit for the residents of York. We firmly believe that the York Gateway Master Plan will do this and support this application. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Do please stay with us for a moment, because I know there's at least one question, because Councillor Fitzpatrick wants to ask something. Go ahead.
I just want to ask you about the River Foss. I'm very glad that you've said that you think it's one of the undervalued heritage sites in the city. It is, in my opinion, too. So given that you feel that about the heritage of the Foss, what do you feel about the design of the bridge? How do you think that's going to enhance the heritage value of the Foss?
I think that the whole application and the whole development, focusing back onto the Foss, is a real benefit. It brings lots of attention and draws attention to the river itself and its surrounding banks. I think the bridge itself, because the design has developed to allow greater access to views of the Foss and through the punch metalwork, but also the lowering of the height of the handrail, etc. I think actually it will be a positive benefit for it. As far as the design goes, to be honest, I haven't really thought about it in that context at all. But I personally and quite like the modernist design that bridge brings to that area. But I think in terms of heritage benefit, I think actually focusing transport, pedestrian and cycling and people back onto seeing the River Foss and understanding its importance to the heritage of our city is a benefit.
Thank you very much. I don't see any other questions. I'm just checking. Councillor Waters, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'm intrigued with the Civic Trust position, actually. I appreciate that membership and indeed leadership of the Civic Trust changes over time. But from memory, I think it was 2004, the Civic Trust came out very strongly, and it was reported in the local media, and they were calling the two tall flat developments in York to be alien developments in the city centre that were detracting from the skyline and spreading further out into the suburbs. Those concerns were over anything reaching over 4 to 5 stories. Is it now the Civic Trust position that any height goes, 6, 7, 8, 9 stories, and it's a purely commercial decision as to whether the Civic Trust will be supporting or objecting these things now?
Thank you. I'm afraid I've only been here 12 months, so I can't answer for what we said in 2004. As you rightly say, opinions change and personnel change. I think what the Civic Trust is firmly a strong believer in is supporting the development of the city going forward to meet the needs of the 21st century. It is about maintaining the special character of our city and really highlighting those historic assets which people come and see. I think there is a very valid question about heights of buildings across the city centre and across the city full stop, and those key views that open up both within the city, within the core of the city, but also further away. In this particular case, I think actually it's about the balance of benefits. So in our opinion, removal of the Castle car park and the delivery of the master plan, with all of that brings all of that heritage damage that currently brings in terms of the car park and its infrastructure to this area, is of greater benefit than seeing a building which is lower than the Rydale building, sitting above the female prison, particularly when you consider that actually with the removal of the car park and the road infrastructure, more people will be at ground level within the courts of the three buildings of the 18th century. So that view will open up much more accessibly than it has done probably for 300 or 400 years, close by, and making use of that ground.
Thank you. Councillor Widdowson.
Just a question. Would you agree that this isn't an anything goes, as Councillor Waters is saying, but that you can assess each application on its merits?
Yes, sorry, yes. It's definitely not anything goes, and the Civic Trust maintain a strong planning committee, and we assess every single planning application that comes through the portal that actually affects both conservation areas and listed buildings and the heritage of the city. And we're also the only city and civic society that has a relationship with the university, whereby a planning club assesses every single planning application to see whether it gets escalated to our planning committee. So it's very much not an anything goes or a Wild West. It is very much all of our decisions and all of our responses are taken in consideration and after some deep thought as well. The height question is one that is referred to virtually every single time we take a planning application above a certain number of stories.
Thank you. That's a really helpful contribution. I don't see anybody else. So thank you very much, Mr. Morrison. And we come to our final speaker, Paul Lambert from the York Museums Trust. Mr. Lambert, are you able to join us now?
Hello, Chair. Can
Hello.
you hear me?
Absolutely.
Hi.
You have the opportunity to speak to the committee. If you could keep it within 3 minutes, that would be helpful.
Hello, I'm Paul Lambert. I'm Head of Strategy at York Museum Trust, and we occupy the land, currently occupy the land opposite as part of the curtilage of the Castle Museum. So we have an interest in the site. More importantly, we have a close working relationship, partnership with the city and others, as we've heard, on the Castle Gateway Master Plan. And for us, this is an important part of the jigsaw that enables, as we've heard, the public realm being created, the closure of the existing surface car park and the redevelopment of that whole of the site, the redevelopment of the Castle Museum, a better setting for the Eye of York and those lovely Georgian buildings that are there, and essentially placemaking, creating a new destination for visitors and residents of York as well. So this is really exciting for us, and a really positive development for the city. Turning to the perhaps to what is currently the rear of the Castle Museum, and we've talked a little bit about what's behind the paywall. Currently, it is a great space by the River Foss. The proposal creates more space for people, much needed space for people, cycling and pedestrian routes from the south, bringing people in to the area, some high quality infrastructure. And I think, as Andrew has just said, those wonderful cultural hidden pieces of our cultural heritage, the city walls, which are scheduled monuments, and the opportunity for the public to see those firsthand, new landscape opening up there. And ultimately, it's a really important stepping stone between Piccadilly, Southern Gateway, and what will be that new public realm. I'm happy to take any questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Do stay as you've invited questions. Of course, I'm looking to see if there are any questions from members, but I don't see any. So thank you very much for your contribution. And by all means, even though you're leaving us now, do continue watching through the streaming service if you'd like to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Lambert. So having heard all of those contributions, it may be that there are some further questions to put to officers before we move on and into debate and come to a decision this evening on this application. And Councillor Kilbane, I know, has a question to put to officers.
Thanks, Chair. It's a point of clarification from legal, really, Chair.
Okay.
Given that this is a City Council application, and given that we've heard from the applicant that the executive position is that they need to maximise the return in order to pay for replacement car parking, is it appropriate for a member of the executive to be sitting in judgment on this application?
Would it be possible just to have a comment on that?
Well, Chair, it is the case that members of the executive do also sit on planning committee. So there is nothing in itself unusual about that. I think maybe it's a question for the particular executive member concerned as to whether that particular executive member considers that they have any particular conflict of interest or are predetermined in any way. I don't know which particular member Councillor Cobain is referring to.
Councillor Cobain?
It's Councillor Widdowson, Sandra, and I was kind of alerted to it really by Councillor Widdowson's very leading questions to the applicant when I realised that actually Councillor Widdowson also represents the applicant in the same matter.
Well, Chair, it is a member for obviously it is an issue and a matter for individual members to consider whether or not they are in any way predetermined or have a conflict of interest or would not be able to come to this committee with an open mind. That's a matter for individual members, Chair. It's not something that I can adjudicate on, I'm afraid. But
no, I appreciate the comment, and it does seem as if Councillor Wilson wants to speak for herself.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead.
Chair.
Go ahead.
Nobody on this committee is whipped. Everybody has their own opinion, and we all take it on the merits that are in front of us. So I feel completely free and fine to make my own decision. Thank you.
Councillor Pavlovic, you were also attracting my attention.
Sorry, just on that point, and just for a clarification from Sandra, if the applicant is the authority and the executive is the administration's decision-making body, why would legal not have an opinion on it? You state that you can't answer the question, but I'm just wondering why, as our legal officer, she either can or there's no conflict, or there may potentially be a conflict. But I'd much rather hear I can't a definitive response rather than I'm afraid I can't answer that.
Well, Chair, the answer is because I can't speak for individual members. I don't know what's in individual members' minds and whether they feel predetermined or whether they consider that they have a conflict of interest because of the views that they have expressed or because of particular decisions that they have taken, which might consider them to feel that they are predetermined. It is ultimately a matter for individual members. And that's what I meant when I said that I couldn't speak for Councillor Widdowson.
That's understood. That's understood. Becky, I think you want to comment too.
Yeah, no, I would just say that we do have members of the exec that sit on planning committee regularly. So it is whether or not members are predetermined. So I know that Councillor Kilbairn is going to say they're considering their own application this time. And I knew that that's what you were going to say. But I think Sandra's given you the answer to that, and it's whether or not members feel, and you've been given a quite clear answer in that respect.
Councillor Waters.
Thank you, Chair. I just had to pick up on the comment that was made about nobody on the committee, to use the ridiculous political term, is whipped and they're allowed to make up their own opinion, except, of course, if that opinion is the wrong one, in which case they find themselves replaced on the committee as one member has this evening. Thank you.
Just a point of order there, Councillor Waters. Councillor Barker wanted to address the previous item on our agenda this evening and did the only thing he could do. We'll move on. Councillor Pavlovic.
Thank you, Chair. I have got another question for Becky, but I've also got a question for David Carruthers as well, raising matters that were brought up by the speakers. So just for absolute clarity, Becky, are we looking at this application in its context of the master plan, or are we looking at it as a distinct application for an apartment block and a bridge and the associated landscape? Because all we've heard tonight from the speakers is about the wider master plan.
Yeah, no, I see exactly what you're saying. You should take it into consideration as part of the planning balance. It is a material planning consideration that you need to be aware of, and it's how we've got to the balance that we've got to, because very clearly it's been outlined that the harm is less than substantial, and I have to make that clear to you. It is less than substantial harm, and that's how that we've made the balance of everything that this scheme provides in itself, and also giving weight and consideration to the wider master planning benefits and the conditions that have been imposed around that.
And you've answered that really, you've answered that really clearly. Thank you. But I do have a question for David Carruthers, and you've just raised the point, Becky, about the less substantial element.
Still here.
Yeah, thanks, David. Now, in 3.3, you state that the harm is considered to be at the upper level of less than substantial of all the heritage assets identified. Can you clarify where the sort of criteria as yes, it's less than substantial, or now it becomes substantial?
So
I didn't realise there was a hierarchy of less than substantial, essentially. So can you just tell me what the thought processes were?
So the MPPF makes it clear that there is substantial harm and less than substantial harm. Substantial harm would be something like the demolition of a listed building.
Right.
And then you have less than substantial harm, which in lots of appeal cases and in lots of discussion is considered at different levels. So I tend to work to a 10-point level, and you would say, well, it's 2 or 3 less than substantial harm, or in this case, I might say it's 7 or 8.
Less than substantial harm.
Less than substantial harm.
Yeah.
Thank you for that clarification.
Thank you.
Can I just say to Councillor Waters, I'm sorry that I made an assumption that you're referring to Councillor Barker. It may not have been the case, but if you want to.
Probably a guilty conscience, and it was a correct assumption. Yes, Chair.
only because you were referring to the administration. Okay, thank you. We don't seem to have any other questions or points at the moment. Councillor Fenton.
Sorry, I thought you were going to move into debate, Chair. Sorry.
Well, given no other questions, I'm happy to do that. Councillor Fenton, do you want to pick up from there?
Yeah, I suppose just trying to pull things together. Obviously, we have focused a lot on the height of the building and the comments from the design architects, and perhaps haven't spoken about some more of the detailed aspects of the proposals, which is a bit of a surprise. I think on the height and massing issue, hear what the conservation architect have said, recognise that he's confirmed that in his view the harm caused would be less than substantial, and certainly in my mind, when I weigh up that less than substantial harm against the clear public benefits that the scheme would bring in terms of housing, in terms of affordable housing, and it's something we haven't touched on, but one aspect of the way we see affordable housing is proposed to be designed will hopefully address some issues that we encounter when we often discuss affordable housing development, and that's the issue of service fees. So that the penny seems to have dropped, that we need to be proactive, and given this is a council application, we seem to be doing that. So again, sort of thinking through, well, how would that less than substantial harm be counterbalanced by the benefits? The affordable housing provision is one of them. The improved pedestrian and cycling crossing of the inner ring road, which again we haven't touched on, is another benefit as I see it. And then we've heard about the enabling effect that the proposed development would have in terms of the public realm, and as we heard from the Museums Trust, the opening up of the currently out of bounds unless you pay to get into the museum area at the side and rear of the Castle Museum. It was interesting having the debate about the views from Clifford's Tower, and the thought came to me and others that, you know, look down from Clifford's Tower. What about that view? And to my mind, that's one of the clear benefits of having a pathway to be able to address that. And I welcome the commitment to the condition that I think it was 2 of the apartment blocks will not be occupied until the Castle car park is closed, machines have been moved out, and an interim servicing put down. So I welcome that in terms of locking in those public benefits that we're told will accrue. I think that's really important. And I suppose in summary, it's certainly clear to me that the public benefits do outweigh the less than substantial harm. And on that basis, I'm more than happy to move approval. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Councillor Fenton. So the next hand I saw was Councillor Fisher. I don't know whether you were wanting to
thank you.
that or.
Yes, I am prepared to second it. I do accept the building causes some harm, but I think on the less than substantial scale, I would regard it as moderate rather than at the upper end. Certainly, I wouldn't consider it enough to refuse the application. But of course, the main thing about this is there is a condition in there that as before this can be occupied, the Castle car park has to be closed. And that itself, just removing the cars from it, would actually be a major asset to the setting of Clifford's Tower. The obvious regeneration scheme, the redevelopment scheme, will come later, and that obviously will depend on the funding available. But just closing that car park and relocating the cars elsewhere would be a massive asset. I have still some concern over the bridge design. I spoke at length with one of the engineers about the actual reason for it being a flat bridge. I would have preferred to have seen a curved bridge, but he outlined to me in considerable detail why it couldn't be curved or arched, because of the difference in levels on either side and the need to put the strengthening at the edges of the bridge because it was so wide. But I do have some concerns about the finish, and I would like officers to speak with the applicants about the finish of the bridge, because I don't think that rusty colour is really suitable for the area. I prefer something a little bit lighter and a little bit better. The other thing that I would also say is I would like to see a lot more vegetation introduced along the side of the River Foss, particularly some vegetation that overhangs the river to provide shelter for things like otters, potential perching sites for kingfishers to fish. A lot of kingfishers from the countryside in winter, when the flows are low, move into the city centres, partly because there's an urban heat island effect. They don't actually have to contend with frozen water in the city centre. So it's a useful site, and the Foss is ideal for that sort of habitat. So if you could provide some more waterside overhanging vegetation, I think that would be a very, very good thing. But overall, on balance, I think this is acceptable, and I'm happy to second approval.
Can I just be clear, Councillor Fisher, you were making some specific points there. Would you be wanting, in seconding this motion to approve, to be putting those in as some sort of conditions or informatives?
I think informatives would be better than conditions. I think it's aspirations. They wouldn't affect my position in seconding it, but I think we could just improve it a little bit. If we inform the applicants, these kind of things would be beneficial.
Can I just check with Councillor Fenton that would be acceptable?
Yes, Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, then we'll move on, because a number of others have indicated they want to speak. Councillor Fitzpatrick, then Councillor Doughty.
Thank you, Chair. Something I hadn't really considered until I heard the public speaker tonight, but I am concerned about Piccadilly. I think the frontage there from the building onto the pavement, I think the impact on the cycle path is really fairly something that we need to consider. Whether or not we're talking about condition or change as we go along. But that only adds to all the other concerns I've got about the bridge and about the scale and mass of the building anyway. So I'm not impressed so far, but I'll continue to listen to other speakers.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Doughty.
Thank you, Chair. I think in all my time as a councillor and long before, the city's been speaking about the need to regenerate the whole Castle Piccadilly area.
I'm disappointed that it's largely happened in a bit of a piecemeal fashion. And to be honest, I'm not entirely enamoured with the apartment block proposition we've got in front of us, if I'm totally honest. But however, I can't put a spanner in the works, and we've heard that from the Civic Trust and the Historic England that they don't consider it to be, or they consider it less than substantial harm. And we really do need to move the wider regeneration forward of the whole area. So on balance, I will be supporting the application.
Thank you. Councillor Pavlovic, and then Councillor Lomas. I've also noticed you, Councillor Waters. Come to you after that.
Thank you, Chair. I think, like the vast majority of people on this committee, and indeed around the city, we welcome, I certainly welcome the Castle Gateway project and its wider development. And had this apartment block essentially been a story shorter, I would have been at the front of the queue approving it. But I think back to all the times since I've been an elected member of members saying York's special character, York's special significance and its history. And if it's not its historic buildings, if it's not the views that you get from those historic buildings and the context that they have within the city, then what is York's special character? Is it Rydale House? Is it the Travel Lodge? No, it isn't. It's the Castle Museum, it's the Crown Court, it's the Women's Prison, it's Clifford's Tower. Nobody, I think, will have thanked those planners that approved Rydale House. You've heard the comments that have been made about it. We have a responsibility, and this is how I'm looking at it. We have a responsibility not just for this administration. We have a responsibility for the next 50 years that this building will loom over those Grade 1 historic heritage buildings. And as I say, had it been a story smaller, I would have had no problem with approving it. The height and the massing and the commercial predication that it has to be 8 stories in order to build a multi-story car park, I just think is false. And I just want to make reference to the substantial or less than substantial harm. We've just heard from the heritage architect stating that for him, substantial harm would be the demolition of a building. Anything else is less than substantial. We're not talking about the demolition of a building. Therefore, the only option he had was less than substantial. He's classed it at the upper end, and you heard it was, in his view, a 7 or 8 out of a 10-point scale of harm at the upper end of less than substantial. So I'm afraid it's with reluctance, it's with genuine reluctance that I can't support the motion to approve.
Thank you for that. Councillor Lomas, then I'm going to come to Councillor Waters, and I've also noticed Councillor Hollier. So in that order, Councillor Lomas.
Thank you, Chair. We've had a lot of repetition of the word looming this evening, and I'll try not to do it too many times, but the assessment of the officers is that this development, or sorry, the officer, is that this development, it would be more harmful to the heritage assets than the car park. So for me, the planning balance is tipping to refusal, because the car park, yes, is harmful to the heritage assets, but that is already there, and it is something that there is a plan in place to remove. So it cannot be considered a long-term future risk to the heritage assets. However, spending millions of pounds building 2 significant buildings and a bridge and all of the infrastructure would be a long-term threat to those heritage assets and would have future long-term harm. We can't turn back the clock and stop that car park from being installed there. We can only go forward and do something about it when we can, but we shouldn't do something about it which creates greater harm than the car park itself. I think it's a real shame, because I feel certain that there could have been a design that would not have created this amount of harm, and perhaps in that instance I would have felt the planning balance tipped back the other way. But I think I've been on 2 planning committees so far since being elected, and several times I've found myself in a position to have to argue that we shouldn't do something harmful just because the thing that's there now is harmful. So let's not harm our heritage assets.
Thank you for that contribution, Councillor Waters, and then I'll come to Councillor Hollier.
Thank you, Chair. I've just listened to the last 2 excellent summaries, and virtually everything I've written down is pointless saying now. But
well,
I'd just like
you don't need to
go,
say it.
Oh no, there's still a few other things happening. I think we need to refer back to the first speaker as well. He made it quite clear that this was a legacy issue for each and every committee member tonight. And I certainly do not want my name on a building this high that's going to cause the harm that the conservation officer has highlighted. And I certainly won't have a gun held to my head about the financial implications of removing 1 story, given the council's record of commercial developments and ongoing schemes like the Guildhall redevelopment and the community stadium, where ever more millions are going to be thrown down a black hole. But I'd just like to go off on a slightly different tack and remind certainly the members that was on area planning, probably a year ago, I think it spanned Christmas, December and January, there was a small, uncontentious planning application that came through that was in Osberwick Conservation Area. It was supported by the parish council, neighbours, including myself, and both ward councillors. We came to area planning to try and get this small scheme through as an extension to a family home. The conservation officer, the same David Carruthers, was wheeled out by the planning officer and gave you all a talk on height and massing and all the rest of it and the impact on the conservation area. To a man and woman, should I keep myself right, every member of that planning committee then lined up to say, oh, we must support the conservation officer's views. What a difference tonight. I just hope you reflect on that. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hollier, then Councillor Cobain, and I see Councillor Fisher's attracting my attention. Is this a supplementary? You want to respond immediately?
It's a point of information. I was on that committee and I did not support that. I actually voted.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. And Councillor Hollier.
Thanks, Chair. I just want to say very briefly, I think I appreciate and understand a lot of what Councillor Pavlovich said, and I think we'd all agree that we're custodians of York's special character. I think we all agree that that special character does exist. But I think the conclusion that Councillor Pavlovich and others have drawn is the wrong one. That doesn't mean that we therefore need to kind of preserve what's there, the sort of bad with the good. This is an opportunity before us to make a substantial net benefit to the historic setting of particularly Pepper's Tower, and get rid of what is, a horrendous eyesore. So, on that, I think it's clear as well that the height of the building is, necessary to ensure that that project can move forward, and provide that sort of major net benefit. So just to say really that I'm pleased to be supporting the application tonight.
Thank you. Councillor Kilbane.
Oh, thanks, Chair. I am tempted to ask Councillor Widdowson to inform us how brilliant her application is, but I'll resist that temptation. What's been really great about tonight is we've actually had a price put on a view. So we now know the price of a great view is £2.5 million. And actually, £2.5 million, I think that's a price worth paying when you think about the next 50 years. And as Councillor Waters has pointed out, the way that money gets spent in other ways. And then we've discovered that we need that £2.5 million because the exec has decided they need it to build another car park. Well, that's definitely not a price worth paying. So what I'll be voting against this proposal. I want to see the Castle Gateway go ahead. It's not an either or on Castle Car Park or this block of flats. I want to see it go ahead. I'm going to vote against approval, and we should send it back and come back one floor lower, and I think we'll all be happy.
Councillor Widdowson, you are indicating you'd like to speak.
Yes, Chair. I actually think that comment from Councillor Kilbane was underhand, and I would like to ask for an apology.
All you've done all night, Councillor Widdowson, is ask leading questions about an application that the executive supports, and you're on that executive.
I don't think we're going to make any progress on that one. I don't see any others who want to speak, so I think we now take the vote. It has been proposed.
Sorry,
I had checked again that to see if his hand was up. Go on then, Councillor Waters, and then we will be putting this to the vote.
Just in relation to the voting, I know it will be called out by name, but can I request that our names are put in the proper minutes for this because of the significance and importance of what we're being asked to approve or refuse?
I see others nodding to that. I don't see anybody objecting to that.
Can I just clarify that under the new standing orders, the name votes are included in the minutes of a matter of course anyway?
That's right. That is what happens, Councillor Waters. So before we move to that vote, which has been proposed by Councillor Fenton, seconded by Councillor Fisher, with various informatives, Becky, would you just help us to be clear what it is that we'll now be voting for or otherwise?
Yep, no problem. So you're voting to approve the application. What I would just outline is that there is already a landscaping condition on there, Councillor Fisher, so we'll add an informative underneath that for what you specifically requested. What I would ask is that we can amend slightly the plans condition because the bridge information is on that, and we won't be, so that allows us to make any changes if you just let officers amend that condition there. And that's what I'm recommending that you do. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I also, that's very clear. Can I also check that all members have actually been able to fully participate and have heard and seen everything that's happened? See all the hands. Councillor Pavlovic, I just hadn't noticed yours yet. Okay. Thank you. So again, if we can move to the name vote, and if the member of Democratic Services, Angela, if you'd help us to do that, please.
Sorry, Chair. Sorry. I just remembered. And the conditions in the additional information with the Grampian conditions and the amended condition. Sorry.
I'm glad you pointed it out at that stage.
Sorry. Before you voted, I just should have remembered that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's move to the vote.
Okay, so this is for approval of the application. Councillor Baker, for or against, or abstentions?
Abstain.
Councillor Daubney?
For.
Councillor Doughty?
For.
Councillor Douglas?
Against.
Councillor Fenton?
For.
Councillor Fisher?
For.
Councillor Fitzpatrick?
Against.
Councillor Hollier?
For.
Councillor Kilbane?
Against.
Councillor Lomas?
Against.
Councillor Pavlovic?
With genuine regret, against.
Councillor Waters?
Against?
Councillor Wardby,
For.
Councillor Widdowson,
For.
and Chair.
4.
Okay, just one moment. So that's approved. There's 8 votes for, 6 against and 1 abstention.
Thank you very much, and thank you, members. Thank you for your participation this evening. I don't have any urgent items of business, therefore the meeting has concluded. Thank you.